On an island, there was a man named Washio who used to teach some monsters how to make snow using magic. He would often encourage them, saying that with practice they could master it too. One day, a monster with an octopus-like appearance approached Washio and said she wanted to become a human when she grew up. Blushing, she confessed that she planned to marry Washio in the future. This made the other monsters upset, as they also wanted to marry their teacher. Washio started to wonder if marrying him was the real reason the octopus-like monster wanted to become human. She explained that she felt different from humans because of her 8 arms and many suction cups. Thinking Washio might find her disgusting, she became sad and cried, fearing he would come to hate her. To her surprise, Washio picked her up and reassured her. He disagreed with her assumption and with a smile told all the monsters something important. In another time and place, there was a school called Munis Inium Real Academy in the Kingdom of Medium. Some exhausted students were heading home when one of them accidentally collided with a male teacher. The man quickly apologized, but a female student overreacted. The girls hurried away, expressing their disgust because they had bumped into old Washio, who had an old man's smell. Washio sighed, feeling a bit hurt by the fact that everyone had given him a nickname and accused him of being smelly. A girl walked into the school with a suitcase. She looked around and Washio couldn't help but admire her beauty. He caught himself thinking about something inappropriate and slapped himself. It was the first time Washio had seen her and he wondered why she had a suitcase. Curious, he asked if she needed help finding her classroom. The girl was surprised, smiled, and gave him a tight hug. Feeling awkward and assuming it was a prank, Washio asked her to let go. Other students looked at him disapprovingly. The girl, realizing the misunderstanding, backed off and explained that she was looking for the head teacher's office. She had forgotten her school map and asked Washio for directions. Despite feeling flustered, Washio guided her to the office and reminded her about the map in the student ID book. The girl opened her luggage and started crying when she saw she had the wrong one. She got really worried because she forgot to bring her books. Washio knelt down and reassured her that it's normal to make mistakes when you're in a rush. He told her to stay calm so they could fix it. The girl felt grateful and thanked Washio. He also mentioned she could replace her lost ID book. The girl remembered his advice about staying calm to avoid mistakes. Washio said it was something he learned from his past experiences as an office worker. He chuckled as he reminisced about his old job, but then he got quiet, lost in thought. The girl didn't understand a word he said and Washio quickly changed the subject, trying to leave. She watched him go, feeling disappointed that he didn't seem to notice how she felt. Later, in the busy teacher's room, an elf teacher rubbed some papers on Washio's head, instructing him to fix the questionnaires. Washio then informed the elf Limnoa that he was going to be busy cleaning the residences. Limnoa advised him to come up with a better excuse next time. He kept saying that odd jobs suited Washio, unlike himself, who attended the Louvre Division of Magical Studies as a consultant and effortlessly won a tournament. Washio just scratched his head and exclaimed how it was an honor to help someone as talented as Limnoa. The elf glared at Washio, laughed, and left, calling him a miserable man. That evening, Washio trudged home, feeling exhausted and hungry. He went past a loud tavern, glanced at it, but chose to keep walking since he had no money. He walked in quietness until he arrived home. Surprisingly, the housekeeper greeted him warmly and offered some leftover dinner. Washio said sorry for the trouble. The housekeeper then advised Washio to find a wife who could cook delicious food for him. Washio chuckled, saying that as a low-ranking teacher, it wasn't likely. The housekeeper agreed and went away. Washio felt depressed and silently went to his room. He entered his untidy room, sat down and took a few bites of the food he had just received. He lay there quietly, reflecting on what the housekeeper had said. He decided to take a shower to clear his mind and remembered how, 10 years ago, he used to work in an office with no prospects for the future. Back then, he didn't have a girlfriend, and one day, while reading a book of famous quotes on his way home, he unexpectedly got summoned to another world. He was hailed as a hero from a different world, gifted with magical abilities. However, he was conflicted with his mission when he realized that monsters were also living beings. Despite trying to save them, the monsters got caught and used for experiments. Washio opens his eyes, having dreamt such a nightmare. He gasps for air, recalling how he couldn't meet everyone's expectations and ended up as a regular teacher at Real Academy. He starts a new life in a new world, but hasn't achieved anything incredible or the harem he always dreamed of. He's just an old man who can use a bit of magic. As he smokes, he remembers the times when he taught some young monsters. He smiles, thinking about the fun he had with them, and decides to go to sleep. The following morning, Washio made it to school on time, and Limnoa teased him about having an old man's smell. The principal then announced that a monster girl would be joining the school, leaving Washio puzzled. Limnoa assumed that someone like Washio might not be familiar with monster girls and went on to explain. He shared that monster girls, with their various mutant species, were considered to have superior intelligence compared to elves. Despite originally being monsters, they took on a human appearance, especially resembling young human girls with beautiful looks. Limnoa pointed out their exceptional physical abilities and mentioned that not much was known about them since only a few existed. Washio complimented Limnoa's knowledge, but the elf dismissed it as common information, reminding Washio that as a biology teacher, he should be familiar with such things. Nervously, Washio smiled and claimed he specialized in lower-ranking monsters. Limnoa continued by explaining that due to these mutated monsters, the government and military officers had promised them a good future as part of the elite. The door opened, and Limnoa was surprised to see a monster girl joining their school. The school director introduced the newcomer, revealing it to be the lost girl Washio had bumped into the day before. The girl Claudia from the Kraken species introduced herself. All the teachers were keenly observing her, particularly her face and overall well-being. Washio quickly identified her as the lost girl. The school director then explained that during Claudia's first week she would receive guidance from a teacher after completing a comprehensive exam. However, Claudia exclaimed that she had already chosen a teacher. She walked past some teachers and stopped in front of someone, telling them that it had been a long time. She extended her tentacles in front of Washio and smiled. However, Washio, who was just freaked out, didn't say anything back as a response. Claudia was disappointed that Washio hadn't realized it yet, and Washio claimed he didn't know any monster girls. Just then, Washio recalled an octopus girl from the time when he was teaching young monsters. Claudia then said it had been a long time since she last saw Washio. In the past, Washio had saved her and reached out to her tentacles. However, right now, he could hold her human hands. Claudia reminded him about the time when Washio saved her. She smiled and told Washio that she had finally become a monster girl. Of course, we all know her goal. A few days later, Washio was running late for work again and had just left his apartment. Suddenly, someone called out his name. It was Claudia. She offered him a ride and wrapped her tentacle around his arm. Claudia sprinted like Usain Bolt while Washio tried to keep up, waving behind her. Later in the classroom, Washio thanked Claudia. It was the first time he'd been early all month. Claudia promised to give him rides every morning. Washio couldn't believe he was suddenly in charge of the creature he'd saved before. The next day, Washio was happy to see the octopus-like creature had transformed into a monster girl, unrecognizable from before. Claudia praised him, but Washio just laughed. Other teachers protested, saying it wasn't fair to decide things this way. However, the school director gave 2 thumbs up, approving of Washio. Claudia felt relieved that decisions had been made. Limnoa stepped forward and proudly declared that as a ranked A teacher, he was more suitable than a ranked E teacher like him. Claudia politely declined and asked Limnoa not to address her as Washio-sensei, based on her rank, as it was impolite. Limnoa was left speechless and the other teachers chuckled at his expense. Washio worried that he might have upset Limnoa. Claudia noticed his concern and inquired about it. Washio brushed it off, claiming it was nothing, and then asked how Claudia's first 3 days at school had been. Claudia happily shared that the classes were enjoyable, especially Washio's biology class. Washio was pleased to hear that, but quickly changed the subject and handed Claudia a form regarding her future. He expressed his belief that someone as talented as Claudia had a bright future ahead, particularly as a monster girl. He assured her she could easily rise to become a high-ranking officer. Claudia held her hands tightly on her thighs and pondered if she truly had no other option. She then admitted something that her classmates had mentioned to her. They kept urging her to recommend them to the King's department once she got in because she was a monster girl and they hoped to use her connections. She said even the teachers had hinted at the same thing. They told her she was a student with great potential and deserved an education at that level. She questioned if she really had to meet everyone's expectations and go through with it. Washio was too shocked to respond until he advised her not to seek advice from someone like him and suggested asking a more qualified teacher instead. Claudia sadly gazed at him and reminded him that he was her designated teacher. Washio couldn't say anything more and left the room. Claudia was clearly upset. During lunchtime, Washio went to get a simple menu, and Claudia wondered if it would be enough for him. She reminded him that not eating well was bad for the body. Washio said he was broke. Claudia then showed her form saying she had finished it. However, someone grabbed it from her and surprisingly, it was Limnoa. He crumpled the form when he discovered that a monster girl was only planning to become a teacher. He told her to reconsider because she was a monster girl who should aspire to something greater. Claudia was scared and speechless. Washio then stepped in and said that a teacher should respect a student's decisions and dreams. Limnoa snapped, smacking Washio's food tray to the ground and saying it would be a great loss for the world. Everyone wondered if the two teachers were fighting. Limnoa said that someone talented like him should be in charge of Claudia, who was also talented. With his weak heart, Washio agreed with Limnoa's words. The elf continued to scold Washio and ordered him to request a change from the director. Just then, Limnoa let out a surprised shriek as a tentacle tapped his cheek. He turned around and spotted Claudia, who was asking him to stop bothering Washio. She talked about how Washio had been an amazing teacher, always supporting her dreams from the beginning. Back when she was disliked by everyone, Washio had advised her to know herself. Everyone around them, especially Lim Noah, was puzzled by what Claudia meant, because it was an unfamiliar phrase to them. Claudia explained that it was something Washio had told her a long time ago. She had been told to discover her own strengths and use them to her advantage. Washio stopped for a moment, remembering when he used to teach small creatures. There was a time when Claudia dreamed of becoming human so she could marry Washio, even though she worried people might dislike her because of her looks. Washio lifted her spirits by sharing a phrase he loved: know yourself. He encouraged Claudia to discover her unique talents before feeling jealous of others. He urged her to focus on honing her own skills and finding happiness within herself. The little octopus blushed with embarrassment. Washio explained that his advice was just his personal take on the phrase. He assured Claudia that he supported her dream of becoming human and would help her however he could. That simple sentence had helped Claudia fulfill her dreams, and she could clearly remember Washio and his words all this time. Washio was happy to see the little octopus evolve into a monster girl. Claudia said it was Washio who had made her realize her good abilities and exclaimed that only he could be her teacher in charge. Lim Noah still couldn't accept it and tried to say something. However, the other students agreed that Washio should just do it. Despite looking old and gross, they knew that Washio was not useless, just like how Lim Noah was claiming. They then continued talking about how annoying Lim Noah was, like he knew everything in this world and didn't respect a student's wishes. Washio noticed Lim Noah trembling and he realized that Lim Noah was crying. Feeling embarrassed, Lim Noah hurriedly ran away, blurting out a line as if he were a member of Team Rocket. Washio felt dazed by the sudden turn of events. Claudia suggested they should grab more food. Seeing how mature the little octopus was, Washio couldn't help but feel proud that Claudia had dreams of becoming a teacher. He felt happy about what he was doing and realized that he had forgotten something as simple as that. Remembering the past and the phrase he had told Claudia, Washio couldn't help but laugh as he realized that the phrase had come back to him like a boomerang. It made Washio realize that being a teacher was a good thing. The two then stopped in front of the food stall, and the touching moment was interrupted by Washio, who was borrowing money from a student. Shortly after, during Washio's biology class, Washio talked about how Claudia could use poison, powerful magic, and inhuman strength. Claudia showed her strength by crushing a huge boulder with a single tentacle. The class ended, and the students were amazed by Claudia despite her cute and fragile appearance. They were surprised to see more students attending the biology class lately. Washio said sorry to Claudia for any inconvenience, but the monster girl was glad to help him since she wanted to be with him. Washio told her to stop joking around, but Claudia ignored him and reached for the chalk writings on the higher part of the board. Washio was shocked that Claudia could reach so high, but she said that what she showed was her limit. Washio remarked on how useful the tentacle was and quickly apologized, sensing that his comment might have sounded insulting. However, Claudia took the opportunity to playfully tease Washio about how useful it had been. She showed off its abilities, mentioning how it could stretch, shrink, bend, and was strong enough to crush a boulder. Wrapping her tentacles around Washio, she jokingly touched him, claiming it was like giving a massage. She admitted she had worked as a masseuse for a while after they separated and had a good reputation for it. Washio was impressed and complimented her skills, dropping to the ground. Claudia then suggested trying a different kind of massage. Slowly, she moved her tentacles a bit lower and slipped them into Washio's pants. As Washio began to pant, Claudia stopped and said she was only joking, wondering if she had made Washio nervous. Washio looked disappointed for some reason. Claudia mentioned she was still 16 in human years and was trying to charm Washio. The school bell rang and Washio said the next class was about to start. Claudia pouted in disappointment since she wanted to spend more time with Washio, but feeling hungry, she went out to get lunch. As she left, Washio slumped onto the teacher's podium desk, realizing how his heart had almost dropped. Meanwhile, Claudia still found it difficult to be charming. When the bell rang again, she hurried off somewhere. Outside the school, a carriage stopped and a girl stepped out of it. The girl, dressed simply and with a pure look, wondered if Washio still remembered her. By the way, Washio had a nightmare involving tentacles that night. Later that day, Washio emerged from the school building, appearing happy and refreshed. It was a rare occurrence for him to feel this way, almost like a miracle. As he walked away, someone called out to him and a girl hugged him from behind. Washio suddenly stepped back, feeling something soft against his back. It was the same girl who had exited the carriage earlier. She mentioned it had been a long time, but Washio didn't recognize her at all. The girl acknowledged that she looked different now, having changed a lot. Then she lifted her skirt in front of Washio, who became nervous. Spider legs emerged from underneath her skirt as she introduced herself as the Spider Washio from the past. It was evident that she had also transformed into a monster girl. Washio wondered if she truly was the little spider from back then. Shortly after, Washio and the girl went to a tavern. The girl was amazed when they arrived at a small restaurant with a broken chandelier. They were shown to their seats and the girl wondered if the dirty barrel was meant for sitting. The tavern owner became upset, but Washio apologized. The owner forgave him and tried to be understanding since it was Washio's first time bringing a girl. Before long, they had a meal, and the girl enjoyed some meat and vegetables on skewers. She found it tasty despite the meat appearing dry. Washio became concerned because the spider girl was criticizing the restaurant. The girl explained she was just sharing her opinion. Since Washio was still using a nickname for her, the girl introduced herself as Aria. Those nearby admired her name, just as they admired Aria's beauty. Washio couldn't believe that the timid little spider who always hid in the corner of the classroom had evolved into a monster girl. Aria said those were tough times but appreciated Washio's encouragement. Washio was puzzled by her remark. Aria remembered that Washio was still teaching and wondered what kind of influence he had on his students. Washio admitted he was now a biology teacher. Aria was surprised, knowing Washio had more potential. Washio said it was okay because circumstances had changed. Aria noticed Washio's sadness and wondered if that was true. Washio then changed the topic and asked Aria if she remembered the little octopus from before. Aria could only remember it as a naive creature. Washio then told her that the little octopus was now named Claudia. He mentioned that Claudia had become a monster girl like him and was also his student. He was happy that Claudia admired him, but he found their relationship a bit strange. Washio went on to talk about how clingy Claudia still was, just like when she was little. While Washio talked, Aria started to get increasingly irritated. She asked the tavern owner for the most expensive menu and beer. Washio was shocked by Aria's sudden change in demeanor. Even the other customers were surprised. Their meal had ended, and Aria started to wonder if it was okay for Washio to pay for everything. Washio laughed and said he could survive on bread for a week. Then he offered to walk Aria home, but her carriage arrived just in time. Washio realized Aria must be wealthy. Before she boarded the carriage, Aria hugged Washio and expressed her hope to see him again, telling him how happy she was to meet him once more. Washio smiled proudly and watched her leave. As the carriage departed, Aria found herself giggling, her spider legs extending out. She couldn't believe she had finally achieved her dream of hugging her teacher with human hands. But her mood shifted when she remembered Washio happily mentioning Claudia. She felt a pang of jealousy that Washio was talking about another girl in her presence. Then she noticed a wrapped gift beside her and realized she had forgotten to give it to Washio. Determined to catch up with him, she made up her mind. In the meantime, Claudia went back into the classroom looking for Washio, where a student informs her that he's gone with a beautiful black-haired girl, surprising Claudia. Aria had gone back to where she had last seen Washio, but he wasn't there. Feeling worried, she decided to wait until the next day to look for him in class. Suddenly, she heard people yelling about a fire at the church. Aria rushed over and saw flames engulfing the building. People were frantic, searching for doctors to help the burn victims. Outside, children were crying and a nun pleaded to be allowed back inside because there was still a child trapped within. Aria asked the nun if it was true, and the nun explained how the children had been playing with a candle while she was out buying food. She begged for help, and Aria promised to take care of it. A man had tried to stop her, but Aria went inside the burning church anyway. Everything inside was engulfed in flames. Aria's water magic skills were a bit rusty, so she hurried to find the child. She searched through the rooms, shouting that she had come to help. Aria kept looking around until she heard someone coughing. She walked over to a nearby bookshelf and found the unconscious child trapped on it. Using her spider-like legs, she destroyed the bookshelf and lifted the child, reassuring him that everything was going to be okay. However, a fiery section of the ceiling began to crack, catching Aria's attention. She spotted it just in time. She thought about using lightning magic to obliterate everything, but that would also harm the unconscious child nearby. As the debris fell, someone swiftly slipped a ring onto their finger and a portal cracked open, revealing a demonic hand emerging from it. A demon-like creature emerged fully, and Washio cast a spell called World Over Water. With the summoned creature's help, Washio used water magic to create a protective bubble around Aria and the child. Aria's eyes widened. It had been ages since she last witnessed Washio's magic. She realized that Washio's power was as potent as ever. Then she corrected herself. It was the magic of the kingdom's highest-ranked magician, known as the Golden Eagle. Washio chuckled, correcting her that he was now a biology teacher, and his hand suddenly began to ache. He was feeling the effects of aging. People were surprised to see that the church, which had been burning earlier, was now covered in water. They tried to figure out who was responsible for it. A kid noticed a fish made of water flying around the church. As she reached out to catch it, Aria appeared, carrying the kid who had been trapped in the burning church. The sister checked on Aria's condition, while others called for a doctor to examine the unconscious child. Aria mentioned that she had already used healing magic on the kid, but suggested letting a doctor confirm the child's health. The sister felt grateful to Aria for saving the child. A man then murmured that it was expected for a monster girl to cover the burning church with water, and praised how beautiful it looked. Everyone was shocked to learn that Arya was one of those well-known monster girls who had a beautiful appearance but inhuman strength. As people gathered around her, Arya humbly said it was no big deal. She then noticed Washio in the distance trying to leave the scene. She called out to him, but Washio just apologized and asked her to take care of things for him. In the end, Arya was left surrounded by people. After some time, the water covering the church finally disappeared. The curious kid from earlier asked if the fish she saw was also made of magic. Arya confirmed it and created more fish out of water. The kid looked happy, and Arya noticed a flower wreath on her head. The kid said it was given by a man with magic, who told her that everything would be fine. Although she felt sad about what happened to the church, the man cheered her up. She said she had come to love magic because it brought happiness to people. Arya remembered how Washio had given her a flower wreath when she was just a spiderling. At that time, Arya often felt disappointed because all she ever received were flowers. She even asked why Washio was teaching them magic. Washio explained that he taught them magic because it would be useful in life later on. Arya responded that they hadn't asked for it. Washio acknowledged her point but shared some wisdom with her. The secret to living was giving. He said that giving something, whether it was a flower or a smile, could make someone feel good. It didn't matter what it was, as long as it made both the giver and the receiver happy. He knew that soon enough this would become the purpose of the monster kids' lives. Arya felt touched and wanted to follow in Washio's footsteps. She couldn't help but smile, knowing that Washio still continued to give to others. The next morning at school, rumors spread that a monster girl had resolved the church fire. Some thought it was Claudia, but those who knew about the new transfer student said it was someone named Arya. Claudia heard the rumors and approached Arya. Arya denied being responsible, and Claudia quickly realized that it was probably Washio's doing since Arya wasn't good with water magic. Claudia wished she could have seen Washio's magic. She asked if the muscle was also involved in the incident. Arya confirmed that it was more muscular and the number of fish had increased. Claudia expressed her eagerness to see it. Washio approached the girls and asked if they had been talking about the past. Arya then acted prim and proper, thanking Washio once again. Because of him, she had been able to transform into a monster girl. As a token of appreciation, Arya gave him a wrapped gift. Washio asked if she was sure about giving him the gift. Arya reminded him that living is giving, after all. Claudia watched as Washio got excited over Arya's gift, his eyes sparkling. Arya then reached for Washio's tie and pulled it off, replacing it with a new one that had a spiderweb design. Seeing Washio wear it, Arya got excited and gave him a big hug. Claudia couldn't do anything but tremble in the background. She said it would have been better if the tie had an octopus design, but Arya insisted that her spiderweb design was better. The two continued their playful argument while the other students watched them from the ground floor. Shortly after, Arya submitted a document expressing her interest in joining the Magic Guard. Washio agreed because even among the students, Arya had exceptional magical abilities. Washio promised to support Arya as much as he could in reaching her goal. Out of nowhere, Arya gave him a sweet hug. Washio felt glad that both Arya and Claudia were thinking about their futures. He reminded himself to do his best to help them. Suddenly, other faculty members started arguing, each believing that one of their students would win this upcoming spring because they had exceptional first-year students. However, they soon felt down as they remembered Lim Noah's 5-year winning streak, and assumed Lim Noah would win again this year. Washio noticed that the other teachers were getting excited, but he didn't think it was any of his business. Claudia soon found out about Arya, who used to get angry and bite others, joining the Magic Guard. Arya claimed it was Claudia's fault because she always brought worms, even though she hated insects despite being a spider. Arya then asked what Claudia planned to do, and the octopus girl said she wanted to become a teacher like Washio since she liked the idea of monsters and humans studying together. Arya called it a wonderful dream. Just then, some students started smelling something pleasant and thought that a flower spirit might be nearby. At that moment, a group of 3 students approached the 2 girls and asked them to join their faction. The 2 monster girls looked confused. The leader of the trio introduced himself as Frederick, a second-year student and a member of Lim Noah's faction. With him were a third-year student from Alba's faction and another third-year from Julia's faction. The girls were puzzled about the factions, so Frederick explained that there were 3 ways to activate magic, and each faction studied different types of innovations to help improve each other's magic. Claudia and Arya understood that it was a magic study group and wondered what to do. The third-year students tried to recruit them, but the narcissistic Frederick insisted that they should join Lim Noah's faction. He boasted that he could help the 2 girls become 1,000 times stronger. He claimed that such elite people should join their faction and shine with them. Frederick had tried to charm his way in, but Claudia bluntly refused his invitation. She couldn't come up with an excuse, and Arya said it wasn't right for someone like Frederick to decide what others should do. A third-year student attempted to invite them as well, but got rejected too. Arya mentioned that she wasn't comfortable with large gatherings, and Claudia wasn't very good with magic since she was more physically inclined. Frederick then stood up and suggested settling things with a magic duel. Claudia tried to refuse him again, but Frederick ignored her and activated a water-based magic spell. He attempted to drown them with a tidal wave, but Claudia easily dispersed the water with a whip of her tentacle. She then glared at Frederick, who began praising her skills as a monster girl. He asked them to return the favor by showing their magic. Arya reminded him that they had already refused his invitation. Determined, Frederick decided to motivate them by summoning a creepy furry creature from his shadow. Meanwhile, in Limnoa's class, he briefly reviewed the principles of magic. He explained that when performing an invocation, a representation of their magical power would appear from the shadows. The appearance of this representation depended on the summoner's rank in magic. This phenomenon was called the image of magic power. Claudia and Arya then realized that the creature before them was a werewolf. Frederick introduced the manifestation of his magic power as if he were showing off an expensive accessory. He wondered if the two monster girls were surprised. Returning to Limnoa's discussion, he explained that the materialization of magic power reflected the user's spirit. These manifestations could take the form of monsters, beasts, or magical creatures, but the key aspect was their size, not their shape. The size was directly linked to the user's magic power. Based on this manifestation alone, others could gauge the user's power just by looking. Frederick stood proudly as the other students were amazed by his imp, the representation of his magic power. They realized that Frederick had grown stronger over the last 2 years. Arya then noticed that the imp was likely around rank C or B. Frederick asked her not to jump to conclusions and demonstrated his magic. He invoked an ice-based spell, causing a massive chunk of sharp ice to appear above them. The large ice block then fell, but Claudia easily destroyed it with her powerful tentacles. Frederick asked if the size of his magic was surprising. By reciting his spell perfectly, he could make his magic stronger, allowing him to use A-ranked magic. He then mentioned that Limnoa, the supervisor of their faction, could triple the power just by reciting his spells. He said it wouldn't be long before Limnoa earned the gold title. After that, he asked the girls if his display of powerful magic had impressed them. The students around them continued to praise Frederick, but they were more impressed by how easily Claudia handled Frederick's magic. However, the two monster girls found the display disappointing. It wasn't weak, but compared to Washio's magic, it was insignificant. Claudia then refused Frederick's invitation for the 3rd time, stating she would ask Washio for help with the invocations instead. Frederick remembered Washio as a boring old man and a useless teacher, which earned him angry glares from Arya and Claudia. He recalled that the monster girls owed Washio a favor from the past and wondered if that was why they chose him. He then mentioned that Limnoa had told him something about Washio being a classmate and graduating together, even though Washio remained an E rank. Frederick assumed the monster girls were being threatened into choosing Washio as their teacher in exchange for his help in their evolution. He called Washio creepy. Just then, something flew past Frederick, easily disintegrating the head of his imp and putting a hole in the tower behind him. The tower then exploded, and Frederick's eyes and mouth widened in shock. Claudia noticed that everyone in Limnoa's faction thought and talked the same way about Washio. She exclaimed how much she hated how they always made fun of Washio. Her tentacles were out of her and was ready for a serious fight. The students reacted differently, some with admiration and others with fear, after witnessing Claudia's magic. Arya reminded Claudia how inappropriate it was to show her legs in public while wearing a skirt. She asked Claudia to control her temper. Despite her warning toward Claudia, Arya herself also revealed her spider legs and spider abdomen, which had a demonic skull mark on them. She then ordered Frederick to apologize for his rude remarks about Washio. Frederick, who had been showing off just moments before, froze in fear in front of the powerful monster girls. The other students had been scared when they saw the tentacles and spider legs, but the fact that they came from a girl made it oddly beautiful. Frederick remained frozen in place as the monster girls asked for forgiveness for the things he had said about Washio. Although Arya sounded calm, the fact that her other spider eyes started appearing showed how angry she really was. Frederick suddenly felt a chill. Washio then arrived at the scene and exclaimed that the library had been blown to pieces. Limnoa also came out of his classroom to check on the sudden commotion. When he saw the damaged library tower, he angrily asked who was responsible in destroying it. Claudia quickly exclaimed that it was Frederick who had started it. Claudia's hand was suddenly grabbed and she felt a chill. In front of her, Frederick knelt and confessed his love. Everyone in the hallway was confused. It was the first time Frederick had seen such powerful magic. He was amazed that Claudia had used such strength without chanting, even though she was wearing a limiting ring, which restricted her power. Seeing her release so much power while wearing the ring was extraordinary to him. He declared that what he felt was true love and asked Claudia to become engaged to him. His words and actions gave Claudia an eerie feeling. Washio interrupted their confrontation and reminded Frederick to write a letter of apology for causing the explosion. Claudia insisted it wasn't a lover's quarrel. Seeing the commotion, Limnoa criticized Washio for not handling the situation properly, given that he was in charge. Washio defended the two girls, saying they must have had a good reason for their actions. He realized Limnoa was right and decided to be stricter with them. Limnoa offered to take over if Washio found it too difficult. Washio didn't respond and simply walked away with the girls. He recognized that Limnoa's persistence was one of his positive traits. Later in the counselor's room, Frederick proudly presented a letter of apology. This made Washio realize that Frederick had started the conflict, and Claudia had only defended herself. Frederick said he had already been reflecting on his actions. Washio wondered why Frederick was being so formal, knowing Frederick was part of Limnoa's faction. Washio warned him to be cautious of his image. However, Frederick wasn't worried since Limnoa could handle any situation and cover it like nothing happened. Frederick then excused himself, but before leaving he promised to remove the brainwashing Washio had put on Claudia so they could officially go out later. Claudia rejected Frederick, and it is the fourth rejection this day. Frederick then turned to Arya and apologized that he couldn't like her because he couldn't handle insects. Despite this, he wanted to be considerate and invited her to join their faction. Unfortunately, he received his fifth rejection of the day. After Frederick left, Washio acted nostalgically, as if he were witnessing something youthful. The girls who were still writing their apology papers asked him to stop and wondered if he was blind after what just happened in front of him. Washio said they looked good together since Frederick was young and handsome while he was just an old man. Washio then looked down, feeling regretful of his own words. Claudia approached him and said she disliked that part of him. Feeling hurt, she asked Washio for a date after their classes as punishment. Washio claimed he was busy for the rest of the month. Suddenly, Arya remembered something. Frederick still hadn't apologized for bad-mouthing Washio. After the girls finished writing their reflection papers, Washio reminded them not to use magic outside of class. The girls promised to remember that. Claudia then got up, saying she would go to class. Before leaving, she reminded Washio about their date after class, which made him sigh. Soon after, Claudia came out of the dressing room in a new set of casual clothes and asked how she looked. The store employees praised her for being incredibly cute. Washio felt lost, noticing Claudia's confidence and that she was waiting for his praise. He told her she looked really cute. Just then, Arya appeared in her casual clothes, asking how she looked too. The store employees exclaimed about how cute they both were, and Washio agreed. The girls clenched their fists, feeling victorious. When Claudia asked Washio for more comments about the other clothes she picked, the store employees started gossiping about him. They talked about his low level as a teacher and questioned his ability to handle the monster girls. Arya and Claudia shot them a cold glare and then grabbed Washio, dragging him away to get some desserts. Everyone got some crepes, and Arya tried to feed Washio, but he said he was already full. Arya kept insisting until a drunk old man noticed Washio and asked how he was. He thought it was cute that Washio was out with students and claimed he had seen Arya in the tavern once. Washio could tell how drunk the old man was, but the old man insisted he wasn't drunk. He then urged Washio to aim for a promotion now that he had cute students, saying being at the lowest level was pathetic. He also asked if Washio felt frustrated that Limnoa was at the same level. The girls remembered how the two men called themselves colleagues but didn't act like it. Washio told the old man that being level E without responsibilities suited him just fine. The old man smacked Washio, calling him pathetic for someone his age. Washio reminded him that he was almost 50. The old man claimed that when he was younger, he was eager to get promoted. Meanwhile, the girls talked about how everyone underestimated Washio. Limnoa and Frederick were obvious, but even the townspeople did. Arya wondered what they could do, and Claudia suddenly had a proposal for her. Arya said she also had an idea. Washio noticed the girls walking away and asked where they were going. The two girls told him to stay away because they wanted to have some girls talk. While they chatted and agreed on something, Washio was bothered by an old drunk man. Suddenly, Arya and Claudia ran off, saying they had something urgent to do and promised to meet again another day. As he watched them leave, Washio felt sad, realizing he now had free time. The old man then invited Washio for a drink and a chat. The next morning, Washio went to the cafeteria and found it strange that Arya and Claudia were missing. Just then, Arya appeared out of nowhere and asked Washio to sign something. When Washio asked what it was, Arya proudly said it was a document to create the Washio faction, and they wanted to show everyone how great Washio was as a teacher. Washio looked very worried when he heard Arya's plan. He worried about what kind of faction it was, realizing it was just another problem. However, he found a loophole and told Arya there was no authority to oversee factions at E rank, so it would be impossible for him. Arya exclaimed it was possible and discussed the requirements to form a faction, saying everything was met. They had a unique magic method using the raising ring, at least 3 members after Claudia recruited them, and Washio had been promoted to D rank, the minimum rank to oversee a faction. Washio was surprised by his sudden promotion since he had been at E rank for 20 years. Arya then revealed she had threatened the director, saying she would leave the school if she couldn't create Washio's faction. Washio angrily told her not to threaten the director like that. Arya claimed all that was left was Washio's signature and urged him to write quickly. Feeling cornered, Washio began to think silently. He then suggested it might be better not to create a new faction. Arya was taken aback. Washio explained that he and Claudia could still learn enough magic with existing factions and by interacting with more students, which would deepen their knowledge. He asked them not to worry about him and to connect with others instead, reminding Arya how Frederick had invited them to join Limnoa's faction. Even if the girls disliked Limnoa, Washio believed someone exceptional like him could handle them. Just then, Washio noticed Arya crying silently while glaring at him. He stopped talking, taken aback. Arya said Washio was much more wonderful as both a teacher and a magician. Instead of denying the unfair E-rank evaluation, Washio accepted it, which frustrated Arya. He then apologized, and Arya asked him to sign the document if he truly felt sorry. Washio stared at Arya and recalled the time he first met her when she was beside her dead parents. As he tried to say something, Claudia suddenly appeared, calling out his name. As usual, he was distracted by her ample figure. She then showed him a letter addressed to him that looked urgent. Washio wondered if it was from the landlord and opened it. The landlord began by apologizing and asked Washio to leave the place immediately the next day. His son was taking over the management and didn't want Washio to stay. Washio was speechless, realizing he would be homeless the next day, right before turning 50. He looked conflicted about his current situation. Arya bowed and said it didn't matter if Washio was doing it just for a place to sleep. They wanted to learn from him. Seeing Arya's proud bow made Washio smile. He pretended to be impressed by Arya's enthusiasm, and Arya responded with thanks, matching his excitement. Washio reminded them that the document wasn't signed yet. As Washio held the pen tightly, ready to sign, he remembered how a faction operated. He realized that a supervisor like him was only needed in a formal sense, similar to a cultural advisor who showed up occasionally. He didn't have much to do while enjoying a pay raise and a free dorm room. His thoughts drifted to the monsters he had encountered before. After thinking for a moment, he finally moved his hand and signed the document. Arya celebrated when Washio signed it, but Claudia noticed that Washio's name was misspelled as Watsuo. Arya angrily asked if Washio had done that on purpose and wondered if it was a moment of clumsiness. Washio had no response. Meanwhile, in a ruined tower, a capsule contained a mecha girl with only 5% of her magic level remaining. Washio and the girls soon went to meet the director to request the formation of Washio's faction, which would focus on the Raising Ring. However, the director refused their request. Claudia, frustrated, demanded an explanation since they had already met the requirements. The director, who was wrapped in her tentacles, asked her to calm down and explained that there was already a faction using the Raising Rings. The girls were surprised and gave Washio a disapproving look for not mentioning this earlier. The director then asked them what a faction truly meant. He explained that factions existed to explore magic in various ways using different thoughts and methods, similar to research groups. The Limnoa faction specialized in vocal summoning, the Julius faction used simulated summoning with rings, and the Alba faction focused on ritual magic with incense. Each faction had its own research theme. After leaving the director's office, Claudia suggested finding another way, but Arya asked what they should do next. Even Washio felt cornered because he needed the dorm room that came with forming a faction. Now he had no choice but to beg the landlord to keep his room. Suddenly, Frederick showed up and called Claudia honey. He tried to flatter her, but Claudia, the octopus girl, kept pushing him away with her tentacles. She asked him to stop calling her that. Washio remarked on how close they seemed, but Claudia shot him a deadly glare and told him to stop saying things that upset her. Washio apologized and Arya comforted him. Frederick then mentioned that he had received a message from Limnoa for the girls. It was about the recently destroyed tower, which actually housed the magic reactor for the Limnoa faction. This caused them trouble, and they needed to go to the Tower of Ghosts to find a new magic reactor. It was the first time Claudia had heard of the Tower of Ghosts. Frederick explained that it was an old, crumbling tower connected to the third floor of the main building, and there were rumors that real ghosts appeared there. Claudia got scared since she found it frightening. Frederick tried to reassure her by saying that Washio would be with them, but Washio was also trembling with fear. Arya then decided that the whole group should go. She reminded them that it was Claudia who destroyed the tower in the first place, and suggested that it should be the three of them going. Even though he didn't want to go, Washio ended up in front of the Tower of Ghosts with the two girls holding onto his arms. He asked them to keep their distance, but Claudia was too scared. Washio muttered under his breath because he was also frightened by ghosts. He opened the door and decided to quickly find the magic reactor so they could leave the ruined tower as soon as possible. At the same time, Frederick informed Limnoa that he had already led the targets to the tower. Limnoa praised Frederick for his work. Frederick said he did it all for his beloved, hoping to join the Limnoa faction. Limnoa planned to scare Washio with the ghosts, then make a dramatic entrance to rescue the girls, showing them his skills as a teacher. He believed this was the perfect way to free the girls from Washio's influence. Frederick applauded him and they both fell silent, staring at each other. Limnoa then started talking about the core values of the Limnoa faction: intelligence, wealth, and pride. He looked forward to the arrival of the monster girls, and Frederick hoped Claudia would also understand their faction's ideals. With Limnoa's plan, he would take charge of the monster girls and they would return to the correct timeline. Meanwhile, back in the Tower of Ghosts, Claudia was breathing heavily while holding Washio down on the floor. Washio asked her to calm down, but Claudia couldn't take it anymore. She puckered her lips and closed her eyes as she leaned toward Washio's face. However, she stopped when her large chest pressed against Washio, who quickly noticed how soft they were. He warned Claudia that they were touching him, but she didn't mind and suggested he could touch more. Washio closed his eyes as he remembered what had happened before they ended up like this. Earlier, Claudia had clung to Washio's arm because the inside of the tower looked dark and frightening, even though it was midday. Washio reminded the girls to find the magic reactor that Limnoa had asked for, and to return quickly. As they began walking inside, Claudia got scared and asked if she could stay outside. Washio asked if she was afraid of monsters and ghosts, and Claudia quickly confirmed it. She was on the verge of tears. Suddenly, a door they passed by opened on its own. Both Washio and Claudia started trembling after seeing what had just happened. Suddenly, a ghost appeared behind them, causing Washio and Claudia to panic even more. They both had the same thought and immediately started running away, leaving Arya behind. Arya called out for them to wait, but in their fear, they accidentally stepped on something, triggering a pitfall trap. They couldn't do anything as they fell into the hole. Fortunately, they weren't injured because Arya used her spider threads to catch them. She told them to calm down as she pulled them back up. However, the trapdoor suddenly shut, cutting the threads. Washio and Claudia then fell to the ground but weren't hurt much. It was pitch dark, and they were shocked that a trap existed inside the tower. Washio worried about Arya's safety but decided to focus on Claudia, who was in front of him. He began removing the spiderwebs tangled around her. Out of nowhere, Claudia started blushing and breathing heavily, saying she felt strange. She crawled towards Washio, saying she couldn't control her monster instincts. Hearing this, Washio panicked and urged her to fight her urges. Claudia explained that instincts were the feelings and actions that happened before thinking. Frustrated, Washio asked what she meant. Claudia continued moving towards him despite his attempts to stop her. She mentioned she was okay with it since they would eventually get married. She began loosening her necktie. Washio, now even more alarmed, begged her to calm down, but he couldn't overpower Claudia, who had monstrous strength, and pinned him down. Just as they were about to kiss, the wall Washio was leaning on suddenly crumbled. They both fell about a meter to the floor, and Washio took the full impact with his aging body. Claudia's eyes returned to normal as Washio groaned in pain. He asked if she was alright, and Claudia assured him she was. Their attention then shifted to a nearby capsule containing a person surrounded by machinery. Washio wondered if it was a girl, but she looked more like a robot or something similar. A voice over the announcement system declared that the magic level had finally reached 0%, and the automaton would shut down for information protection, exploding in 60 seconds. Now, Washio and Claudia had something else to fear besides ghosts. The countdown began, and the two of them panicked. Claudia asked what they should do, and Washio shouted that they needed to escape. However, the only door in the room was tightly sealed and wouldn't open. They soon realized they were trapped inside. No matter how much Washio twisted the doorknob, it didn't open, indicating that they were trapped in the room with the automaton counting down to its self-destruction. Washio suggested that they should calm down first, as that would help them avoid panicking and increase their chances of success. Following his advice, Claudia managed to calm herself for a moment and then asked how they could escape. Noticing that the automaton was responsible for the countdown, Claudia proposed stopping it. Washio agreed and began searching for a manual. As he looked around, he found something: a magic book. When Claudia asked what it was, Washio wasn't surprised that she didn't recognize it, and decided to explain later. The two started reading the book, but Claudia said she couldn't understand the content. Fortunately, Washio grasped most of it. He approached the capsule and placed his hands on the glass. Closing his eyes, he visualized a massive door and then saw someone with large horns. He began a silent conversation with this horned figure, and magical energy began to spread throughout the room. The automaton stopped its countdown and resumed its regular operations. Washio let out a sigh of relief. Claudia was surprised and started calling Washio master instead of teacher. Washio said his magic was truly drained and that he had followed the instructions in the magic book. Claudia expected no less from someone known as the Golden Eagle. Washio asked her to stop using that title since it had been 20 years. Claudia insisted it was true and that she would always be proud to be his student. Realizing Claudia was his student, Washio began to remember the situation they had faced earlier. Curious, Claudia then asked what the magic book was about. Washio explained that the book was an ancient magical artifact. It was his first time seeing a real one, and he believed it contained many lost spells. However, he said he couldn't understand everything without a language analysis. Claudia recalled him reading it correctly earlier, but Washio said only a few words were clear. At that moment, Washio found some notes. Claudia then had an idea. She suggested using the magic book as the study focus for their group. Washio was surprised by this suggestion, but suddenly, something opened behind them. The girl from before emerged from the capsule. She looked at them as they stood there, silently surprised. She asked if they knew her master. Washio said they didn't know him at all. She understood and stepped out of the capsule. Then she started shouting, calling out for her master. She apologized for sleeping for so long and proposed restarting her master's research. Hearing this, Washio looked sad and glanced at the notes he had found earlier. He handed them to the girl, who quickly recognized her master's handwriting. The notes revealed that her master didn't have much time left but had no regrets. He was happy he had spent his time researching magic with her, but he was too weak to continue using the magic book and her. He suggested passing the responsibility to the next master and asked them to add new pages to the book, continuing the girl's mission. The girl could only say her master's name. She thanked Washio for showing her the notes and offered to unlock the door so they could go home. Claudia suggested going with them, but the girl said she had no reason to exist anymore since her master was gone. She decided to go back to sleep until her master returned. In the end, the girl went back to sleep in the capsule. Claudia asked Washio if he wanted to be the girl's new master, but he said he couldn't. Claudia mentioned that Washio had a lot of magic in him, but he explained again that he couldn't because he was just a simple biology teacher. Claudia felt nervous as she watched Washio walk away with a troubled look on his face. Washio then remembered what was written in the notes, asking the next master to take care of both the book and the girl. Claudia asked again if Washio was sure about leaving the girl alone. She called out his name, but Washio kept walking. He remembered most of the notes. The original master assumed the person reading his letter would have exceptional magical abilities and didn't care about age. However, his focus was on something else. The book, known as the Black Leather Grimoire That Keeps Silent, was one of the 7 ancient artifacts. The girl was the book's guardian. For generations, the book had been entrusted to those capable enough to be its owners, also called administrators. Unfortunately, the previous master's magical abilities were too weak to handle both the book and the girl. He had no regrets, and looked forward to his research every day. As he wrote the letter, he hoped the next master would continue adding new pages to the book alongside the girl, as that was her mission. Washio thought it wasn't about his magical abilities, but that the 7 artifacts were too much for a biology teacher like him. He believed there were more suitable and worthy people for the role than himself. Claudia noticed Washio's worried expression. She paused and looked back at the girl sleeping in the capsule. She felt so sad that she bit her lip in frustration. She asked Washio to become the girl's mentor and pleaded with him to do so. Washio agreed it was unfortunate that the girl went back to sleep after waking up, but he said he couldn't help her. Claudia then grabbed his hands and asked him to help the girl just as he had helped them, the monsters, before. She didn't know what had happened to Washio after they went separate ways or what he was currently worried about, but to her, Washio was always the kind and dependable man who helped others. She said that was how she saw him. Washio then began thinking about how Claudia and Arya had grown up to be strong and dependable. He found it hard to believe he needed a student to push him into making decisions. Washio understood what Claudia was asking, but still thought it was strange for a teacher to take on the role of the girl's mentor. He apologized for being an awkward and clumsy teacher. He promised Claudia that he would explain one day why he ended up becoming a pathetic old man. Claudia couldn't help but smile at Washio's honesty and said that this part of him was also a part of who he was. Washio wasn't sure if that was a compliment. They returned to the room with the capsule. After opening it, they watched as the girl began to wake up. Washio remembered more details from the letter. The previous master had mentioned that the girl had a heart and asked the next master to give her a name and lots of love. He also wished for her to receive a genuine smile that he himself had never experienced. When the girl woke up, Washio greeted her and called her Alice. He held her hand and promised that her mornings would be filled with light and hope. He asked if she would go out with him. As her system rebooted, the girl asked what Alice meant. Washio explained that he had given her a name and worried whether she didn't like it. The girl understood, updated her name to Alice, and asked if Washio was her new master. Washio confirmed this, and Claudia introduced him as their teacher. Alice then updated her database with Washio's name and greeted him as her new master. Washio asked her not to call him that. Soon after, Limnoa was shocked when Washio returned with a rare automaton and one of the Great 7 artifacts. Washio had found them in a hidden basement in the Tower of Ghosts. Limnoa was clearly surprised by Washio's unexpected discoveries. Even the director was astonished to see a grimoire in the academy, and praised Limnoa for sending Washio to retrieve it. Limnoa, of course, quickly took the credit and reminded everyone of his high rank as a teacher. Claudia then suggested using the grimoire as a research subject for the Washio faction. The director agreed but was concerned if Washio could handle it. Washio assured him that he would do whatever it took, as his students were all exceptional in their own ways. Arya and Claudia couldn't help but smile. Alice suddenly reminded them that she wasn't a student, and Washio asked her not to spoil the moment. In the end, the director approved the creation of the Washio faction, and their residence would be the Tower of Ghosts, which would soon be repaired. Washio and Claudia felt downhearted about living with ghosts. Arya told them not to be sad because the ghost in the tower was actually friendly and kind. The two were surprised and asked if Arya could speak to ghosts. Arya said she had a nice conversation with the friendly ghost since she was bored after they left her behind. However, she mentioned that Limnoa had taken the ghost away. Alice realized how close they were standing. Washio then asked the two monster girls to help Alice pick out some clothes. Claudia mentioned that, even though Alice was already dressed, her current outfit seemed awkward. Staring at the tight clothes, Arya agreed, saying it was difficult to know where to look. Washio began to walk away, telling them not to be shy with each other. He explained he would be busy handling paperwork for the Ghost Tower's repairs. The girls tried to lead Alice away, but she wanted to stay beside her master. The girls insisted they needed to strengthen their friendship first. Alice called out to her master, but Washio just smiled and waved. While the girls shopped for clothes, Washio met with the dwarves to discuss the repairs. Alice ended up getting some new outfits. The dwarves began working on the Ghost Tower, and the progress was going smoothly. Later, the girls returned and showed Alice her new clothes. Washio was surprised to see her in a maid outfit. Alice explained that she chose the best attire for serving her master. The dwarves whispered about the cute girls hanging around with an old guy like Washio. Claudia asked if Alice looked adorable, and Washio quickly agreed. Alice was surprised and smiled for the first time. Claudia teased her about blushing, but Alice said she didn't have such features. Arya noticed her smile, but Alice denied it. Washio then asked them to stay back because the repairs were still ongoing. Alice offered to help with the repairs, but the dwarves didn't want a girl like her doing heavy labor. The girls insisted it would be okay since they were monster girls and a machine. Surprised, the dwarves decided to accept their help. At that moment, a piece of equipment holding a boulder started creaking, and Alice quickly noticed it. Her right arm transformed into a cannon by flipping her wrist, and she decided to destroy the boulder, which could be dangerous for her master. With just one shot, the massive rock disintegrated into nothing. Washio and the dwarves were stunned. After eliminating the threat, Alice's arm returned to normal. She approached Washio and gently grabbed his face, asking if her master was okay. Washio assured her that he was safe. He smiled, feeling fortunate to have gained the affection of another incredible girl like Alice. Alice was relieved that Washio was unharmed, and asked everyone to continue with the repair work. The next day, Washio asked the landlord he knew if he really needed to go out. The landlord said she wanted Washio to stay, but her son insisted that they throw him out. She apologized and asked Washio to leave for good. Washio tried to ask for the son's forgiveness, but the landlord told him again that he had to go. As they walked away, Washio wondered what he would do with his life. Alice asked if he planned to stay in an inn while the ghost tower was being repaired, but Washio said he didn't have the money for that. Claudia then remembered that Washio didn't have friends to help him, so she suggested he stay in her room for a while. Washio refused. Arya then offered her room and promised him the best hospitality ever. Alice just stared at them. Washio said it would be strange for a teacher to stay in a student's room. Claudia insisted it wasn't weird at all. She asked if Washio felt nervous when she invited him into her room. Teasingly, she asked if he expected something more than just sleeping. She offered to lie down together on her bed and talk a little every night. Then she suggested something bolder and used her tentacle to tickle Washio's sides. In a panic, Washio told her to stop what she was doing in public. Arya leaned toward him and suggested that she didn't mind since there should be no boundaries between a teacher and a student. She teasingly claimed she wouldn't mind if something more happened than just sleeping normally. Alice continued to analyze the situation and process something in her system. Alice tried to tell her master something, but Washio suddenly started shouting. He asked them not to underestimate him, claiming he had friends to help him when he was in trouble. He insisted he had hundreds of friends and wanted to prove his popularity. However, the girls doubted his words. Washio soon approached his frenemy Limnoa, but the elven teacher outright refused his request. Washio asked her to consider it for the sake of their camaraderie, but Limnoa didn't want to help him. She reminded Washio of their ranks, even though they knew each other. Claudia and Arya started to doubt if the two had really been classmates before. Limnoa made the gap in their ranks clear, saying it was unbearable to breathe the same air as him. The others wondered how Limnoa felt in the teacher's lounge if that were the case. Limnoa then offered the balcony if Washio wanted it. With Alice's help, Washio set up his bed on the balcony without hesitation. Limnoa panicked and asked if Washio was really sure about taking over the balcony. Washio was totally fine with it, but Arya and Claudia were not. They dragged Washio away. Afterward, Arya teasingly suggested going to one of their rooms. Both Arya and Claudia were excited to have Washio in their rooms. Washio refused to stay in a student's room. Just then, Alice raised his hand silently, leaving the others confused. In the end, Washio decided to stay in the room with Alice's capsule. He said he should have stayed there from the start. Alice couldn't help but agree and gave Washio a cold look. Washio said goodnight to Alice and went to sleep. Meanwhile, Alice laid down in her capsule and greeted her master. That night, Washio suddenly had a dream about his past as a hero. He walked through a ruined village and began breathing heavily in his sleep. He remembered seeing a weak baby octopus, and his heart tightened as he recalled heavily bombing a place with explosion magic. There had been a time when he stood on a mountain of dead monsters he had killed. However, that realization struck him hard. Washio woke up to see a humble pair of melons. He realized Alice was in front of him and started to freak out. Alice asked if she had woken him up. Washio wanted to know what Alice was doing. She explained that she noticed he was having a nightmare and decided to give him a hug. Washio insisted he was fine and asked her to let go. However, Alice analyzed the situation and suggested they stay in their current position a little longer. She promised to always be by his side so he could sleep peacefully. Washio insisted he was really okay now. He tried to escape the hug, but Alice was too strong. She began telling Washio words of affirmation, assuring him that everything was fine. Her voice was soothing, like ASMR to Washio's ears. Gradually, he started to feel sleepy, calm, and comfortable. He noticed how warm Alice was and ended up closing his eyes. He wondered when was the last time someone had hugged him. After such a long time, it felt like he could fall into a deep sleep again. The next morning, the girls were shocked to see their dear teacher sleeping while being hugged by Alice. They became angry and called Washio the worst person ever. When Washio woke up, he asked what was happening. Alice gave the girls a silent stare. Doubts crept into their minds about whether Washio and Alice had done something more than just sleep. Washio felt hurt by their suspicions and asked Alice for help to explain things. Alice remained silent. As the girls realized why Washio had turned down their offers, they expressed their disappointment loudly. Washio asked them to stop using misleading words. He urged them to calm down and reminded them that Alice was an automaton. He insisted that Alice couldn't do the things they were imagining since she was not a living being. Finally, Alice spoke up and confirmed that she was an automaton, not a human. However, she stated that she had the necessary reproductive features and functions, possibly something like a Wombforce GTX 3080. The room fell silent as everyone looked at her body once more. The girls then gave a doubtful look to the worried Washio and began calling him indecent and shameless. Washio asked Alice if she was serious, and Alice confirmed that she was. Meanwhile, Limnoa worried about whether Washio had found a place to sleep and stay. Claudia asked Washio to have lunch with her, but Alice had already prepared lunch for him. The other students noticed and thought Washio was impressive for being popular with the monster girls. However, they wondered why Arya was standing silently, staring at Washio. They assumed she might be upset. During class, instead of paying attention, Arya was thinking about ways to get Washio to notice her. She saw how he was always with Claudia and Alice, but didn't seem to notice her at all. When the teacher asked her to solve a problem on the board, she was too focused on her thoughts, and accidentally said them out loud. The teacher reminded her to focus on the lesson. At that moment, Arya glanced at her chest and uniform and compared herself to Claudia and her attire, who was more carefree and bold. She realized what might be holding her back and decided to try something different. Meanwhile, Washio was struggling to translate a spellbook he had recently found. He couldn't understand the language since he only knew Japanese. He decided he would ask the linguistics professor for help later. Arya entered the classroom with a smile, wearing a uniform similar to Claudia's. Though it looked untidy, it showed her slim figure. She walked over to Washio and asked what he was doing. Her action seemed unusual as she moved in a way that drew attention to herself. Washio felt uneasy, breaking into a cold sweat as he tried to figure out what Arya was up to. Noticing her strange behavior, he asked if she had eaten something unusual. Arya denied eating anything strange, but then mentioned she hadn't eaten at all. She leaned closer to Washio and repeated her question about what he was doing. Washio glanced at her but tried to focus, saying he was deciphering the spellbook. Arya leaned in even more and asked about his progress. Washio felt increasingly nervous, noticing her different tone and messy uniform. He couldn't help but wonder what was wrong with her. Arya continued, saying it felt hot in the classroom. She began undoing her necktie, but instead of being distracted, Washio became more concerned. He knew it was unusual for Arya to feel warm, especially since her clothes were light. He worried even more, unsure of what was going on with her. Arya noticed that Washio seemed more confused than excited by her actions. She had tried to imitate Claudia, expecting a similar reaction, but something had clearly gone wrong. Unsure of what to do, she grabbed Washio's head and pressed his face against her chest, telling him to relax and rest. Embarrassed, Arya decided to try imitating Alice this time, but the act left her feeling awkward. Before Washio could fully process what was happening, a sudden blinding light shone from the spellbook, catching both him and Arya off guard. At the same time, the door opened, and Claudia and Alice entered with the book Washio had requested. However, Washio was nowhere to be found. Alice explained that Washio was inside the book, undergoing a test. Meanwhile, inside the book, Washio and Arya found themselves surrounded by shadowy figures. Alice confirmed that Arya was with Washio, taking the test together inside the magic book. A mysterious voice then told Washio and Arya to begin their test. Washio asked where they were and what kind of test it was. The voice explained that it would judge whether Washio was worthy of mastering the 4 stellar spells. If he failed, he would lose his life. Suddenly, a bright light blinded them both. Washio soon woke up in a strange place filled with thick fog. He asked if Arya was okay, and the spider girl said she was fine and wondered if they were in the test area. Washio guessed it might be the test, but he wasn't sure. He just wanted to escape quickly, as he needed to continue working on deciphering the spell book. He also didn't want to miss the magical presentation at the faction meeting, which was organized by the Magic Study Group, as mentioned in a previous chapter. At that moment, Arya noticed a figure approaching. Washio thought it might be the person who locked them in. However, the figures turned out to be shadows holding weapons. Arya pointed out that the shadows seemed hostile and hugged Washio. As they were surrounded, Washio wondered if this was part of the test. Feeling Arya against his back, he realized he was being attacked from both sides. He tried to focus on the situation but couldn't. Arya noticed Washio's discomfort. She pulled out a magic-enhancing ring from her pocket and put it on her finger. With a simple gesture, a thunderbolt struck the shadow figures. Arya called them easy opponents. Washio cheered for her power and asked her to take care of the rest of the test. Arya used lightning bolt against the shadow entities, repeating the attack as much as she could. After walking for a while, she realized something. In this world, she and Washio were the only people around, like Adam and Eve. She saw that the winning conditions were clear and thought it was her chance to act. They had already achieved being alone together, and now there were only 2 more steps: mutual love and spending time together. She noticed Washio walking ahead and tried to catch up. When she accidentally brushed her hand against his, she blushed. She couldn't believe they were already at the holding hands stage. This girl needs to chill. Arya decided not to hold back and called out to Washio. She fidgeted and said she was tired. She sweetly asked him to carry her. This surprised Washio, and he asked what was going on with her since she didn't usually act this way. Arya gave him a serious look. Washio asked if something was wrong and said if she was troubled, she could talk to him. Arya then said she only wanted Washio to see her the way he saw Claudia. She just wanted to see him excited when he was next to her. However, Washio wasn't paying attention because he was focused on the enemies attacking Arya from behind. As Arya explained what she had been doing, the enemy behind her swung its axe toward her. Washio quickly grabbed and held Arya to protect her. He then asked if she was okay. Blushing, Arya said she wasn't sure how she felt. Washio, concerned, asked if she was hurt anywhere. Before she could answer, the enemy raised its axe for another attack. Washio panicked and quickly jumped out of the axe's reach, narrowly avoiding the strike. He apologized to Arya for pinning her down, explaining he just wanted to make sure she didn't get hurt. Arya placed her hands on Washio's cheeks, her expression suddenly playful. Washio froze, too stunned to react. She wrapped her arms around his neck, pulling him closer. Then she whispered in his ear that her heart was racing and asked him teasingly what kind of race it might be. Washio was startled and said Arya wasn't acting like herself. He reminded her it wasn't the time to behave strangely since the enemy was still there, and they couldn't ignore it. In response, Arya struck the shadowy figure with a thunderbolt, burning it to ash. She then asked Washio what kind of person she would be if she didn't take action. Finally, she asked how he really saw her. However, their moment was interrupted by a shadow holding an axe. It roared in frustration after surviving the thunderbolt. Washio said they could talk about things later after defeating the enemy. Arya held on to Washio more tightly. Noticing this, Washio created a barrier to protect them. Seeing how serious Arya looked, Washio wondered if she even realized her own charm. He then told her how she was elegant, kind, the best at magic in their class, and a precious student. He acknowledged that Claudia and Alice had their own unique qualities, but Arya also had hers. He told her that each person was special in their own way. He asked her not to imitate someone else's style or behavior. While the enemy continued attacking his barrier, Washio shared a saying he often used. He explained that sunflowers and peonies were just as beautiful as roses. They might be different flowers, growing in different places, but they were all beautiful in their own way. He said it was the same for people. Arya froze when she heard his words. Realizing he had said too much, Washio tried to make his point shorter, but Arya giggled and said his habit of talking too much was part of his charm. Washio became flustered at her sudden comment. Arya realized she didn't need to be like others since she had her own strengths. She fixed her messy clothes and thanked Washio for his advice. Washio couldn't help but smile. He added that seeing her in a short skirt was refreshing, but he preferred things as they usually were. The enemy kept attacking the barrier, making loud noises. Arya became annoyed, raised her voice in her usual tone, and complained about how noisy it was. The shadow creature was struck by another thunderbolt. Arya didn't hesitate anymore to use her spider legs and thought she should have done that from the beginning. While carrying Washio in her arms, she charged through the enemies like a truck. She realized she could have used her speed to avoid fighting them one by one. Meanwhile, Washio felt uncomfortable being carried by his student. He accidentally mentioned how embarrassing it was, and Arya heard him. She smiled at him sweetly, which made Washio blush and his heart flutter. Though he was older, he still felt a bit romantic. The two soon reached a large, tall door with a magic circle on it. Washio remarked that the door looked important and wondered if there was magic on the other side. Arya tried to push the door open, but it didn't move, even with her strength. Washio jokingly said, "Open sesame," but nothing happened. However, after a moment, the door opened. Arya was impressed and asked if "Open Sesame" was a kind of unlocking spell. Washio, confused, said he didn't expect the childish spell to work on the door. The two stepped into the room and saw a glowing ball of light on a pedestal in the center. Washio stopped moving and ignored someone talking behind him. He noticed another head beside Arya. Drawn to the magical energy, Washio reached out toward the glowing ball. Suddenly, a talking snake stopped him, asking if he was even listening. Washio flinched in fear and backed away, protecting Arya. He asked how she was. The girl tried to introduce herself, but the snake interrupted, saying they were the guardians of magic. The snake told Washio that if he wanted the magic, he had to defeat them. When it saw Washio trying to touch the glowing ball again, it scolded him for touching things without permission. At that moment, the girl trembled and said she couldn't do it. The snake scolded her for acting strange and told her to speak up. It reminded her that she was a guardian. When Washio reached for the ball again, the snake turned its scolding toward him. It also scolded Arya for laughing. The snake couldn't believe they were being treated like this and ordered the girl to show what she was capable of. The girl then said she was ready and showed her glowing eyes. A bright light flashed toward Washio and Arya. Washio was blinded, and when he opened his eyes, he saw that Arya was petrified. Worried, he asked the snake and the girl what they had done. The snake told him not to worry, saying Arya was only petrified. They didn't want her to hear what they were going to discuss. The snake said it was part of a deal, and Washio asked what that meant. The snake said it wouldn't be a bad offer. He would have to pay a price to gain magic, and if he agreed, Arya's petrification would be lifted, and he would get the magic. Washio understood what was happening and asked what he needed to pay, touching Arya's petrified shoulder. The snake said the price was simple: Arya's feelings for Washio. Washio was shocked by this. Washio looked confused as he asked if Arya really had feelings for him. The snake nodded in agreement. Washio insisted it couldn't be true, but the snake frustratingly pointed out it was obvious. Washio then asked what would happen if he returned Arya's feelings. The snake confirmed that Arya would go back to normal. Washio, still worried, asked if that was all there was to it, but the snake called him stubborn. Suddenly the snake turned serious and explained how much she enjoyed love. She said they fed on emotions, and love, especially innocent childhood crushes, was her favorite. She also admitted liking the thrill of a boy secretly reading adult magazines late at night. The girl added that she enjoyed the guilt of betrayal, NTR, describing it as bitter but still delicious. The snake complained about the girl's extreme tastes. Washio couldn't believe what he was hearing and dismissed the idea of Arya loving him as a joke. The girl criticized Washio for not understanding and explained that girls Arya's age often had crushes on older boys. She claimed it was a common trend. However, Washio remained in denial. The snake then asked him about his own feelings for Arya. Washio thought about it and concluded that Arya's feelings were just a misunderstanding caused by her youth. He assumed she would realize it was just a fleeting crush once she grew up and met someone truly special. He asked the snake if his answer was correct. The snake agreed and finalized the deal. Washio would gain the magic to escape from the book, while the snake and the girl would enjoy feeding on Arya's temporary infatuation. She then asked if Washio was fine with the arrangement. After finishing his faction's research presentation, Lim Noah thanked everyone for listening. The audience praised him for improving the fireball spell's range by 30% with his new incantation. As Washio awkwardly walked toward the podium, people whispered about how his small faction of only 3 students had joined the presentation. Many didn't know what to expect from an E-ranked professor like Washio. Someone pointed out that Washio had just been promoted to D rank because he started his faction, but others argued that E and D ranks weren't very different. Washio told everyone that his faction was studying lost magic from ancient times. The crowd was stunned. He then led the group outside where Claudia and Arya were waiting. Claudia said they were ready. A man in the crowd asked about the massive magic circle in front of them. Washio explained that it was designed to attract powerful dark magic since they didn't know exactly where it would appear. He added that the circle also acted as a barrier to contain the spell's power, and warned everyone not to step inside it. Washio began casting the spell and announced it was time for his faction to reveal their research results, 4-star meteor magic. He summoned his magical entity and cast Meteor Swarm. The crowd couldn't believe what they heard and immediately looked up at the sky. A swarm of meteors began heading toward the planet. At the same time, an evil dragon named Capivara was resurrected and prepared to bring destruction to the world. Capivara unleashed his dark magic, which attracted the meteors that were supposed to hit the planet. Instead, the meteors changed course and struck Capivara, injuring his sides. On the ground, Limnoa sensed something unusual. The others asked Washio if his magic had failed since nothing seemed to happen. Washio told them to wait and started chanting the Meteor Swarm spell again. Unknowingly, he had already defeated the evil dragon in space. Only Limnoa noticed the dark magic in the skies. Capivara, who had been sealed for 300 years, didn't even survive for half a chapter in the story. He was destroyed by someone later recorded as the Invisible Hero. Washio grew worried because there were no visible results. Limnoa then commented that this was expected for someone of E rank. He added it would be unfair to compare Washio to himself, boasting that, as an A rank, he was superior. The others agreed and returned to the hall. Arya remarked that Limnoa's comment was rude. Claudia said Washio's magic was still impressive even if there had been a small mistake. Arya then asked Washio what had happened during the trial, as she couldn't remember. Washio looked at her with concern and admitted he couldn't recall anything either. Surprised, Arya realized something strange was going on. Claudia urged both of them to try harder to remember what had occurred. From a distance, the snake and the girl watched Washio and the others. The snake asked if Washio was always indecisive like that. The girl hoped Washio could handle the Meteor Swarm spell. The snake told her not to worry and reminded her of Washio's words. At the trial, Washio refused to let the snake take Arya's feelings of infatuation toward him. He said it didn't feel right to gain magic by giving up something important to Arya, even if her feelings were only temporary. He declared he would rather give up on magic, which surprised both the snake and the girl. The snake smirked and looked up at the sky. She said the spell was too powerful to give casually to someone who wasn't kind. She believed Washio would be fine, but the girl still felt worried. Later in the evening, different factions attended the buffet party. Most of them enjoyed the food but were criticized for not contributing anything. Someone mentioned they could learn something from Limnoa. Limnoa and Frederick spent the time praising each other's status and appearance. While many admired the top faction, others started wondering about the dull faction led by Washio. The boys were eager to see the monster girls in their dresses. Arya and Claudia then appeared wearing elegant dresses. Everyone was amazed by their beauty and called them goddesses. Frederick froze as he watched Claudia, his crush, take a bite of meat and enjoy it. Claudia caught the attention of others as well. She told Washio the meat was tasty, but some sauce dripped on her dress. Arya scolded her for being messy. Claudia turned to Washio and playfully asked him to wipe the sauce for her. Washio felt nervous since everyone was watching and told her to do it herself. Arya also told Claudia to clean up. Alice then stepped in with a towel and wiped the sauce off Claudia instead. Claudia suddenly felt chills when Frederick appeared and started praising her. She quickly tried to leave, but Frederick chased after her. Arya observed them and remarked that they seemed very close. Meanwhile, Washio's stomach growled and he felt embarrassed. Alice noticed and quickly filled a plate with food to offer him. Washio was grateful, but the stares from others made him uncomfortable. They were envious because a cute girl was serving him and seemed to be flirting. Arya then grabbed Washio's hand, brushing his arm against her chest. She teasingly claimed she wasn't acting like her usual self, and asked him to guess the difference. Washio panicked and nervously asked her to let go. Alice suddenly pointed out that Arya's bust had shrunk by 10 centimeters. Washio already realized this from the contact but couldn't understand why Alice was the one saying it. The other students were shocked that a female student was openly talking about such things with a male teacher. Arya admitted she had been using padding since their reunion, thinking Washio preferred a fuller figure. However, she declared that from now on she would be confident with her natural body. Alice then wondered if Washio would want her to modify her body to look fuller. Arya told Alice to stop and suggested she take better care of herself as she was. As Washio endured the awkward attention, Alice quietly shifted her gaze toward him. Washio stepped out onto the balcony to smoke, avoiding the noisy and flashy environment inside. He leaned against the railing, quietly watching the others. As he stood there, a memory from his past surfaced in his mind, and he closed his eyes. Suddenly, the snake and the girl dressed in revealing clothes appeared near him. The snake asked why he was outside and commented on how the shabby old man had somehow turned good-looking. Washio was startled to see them outside the spellbook. The girl then asked if he wasn't planning to join the party. Washio replied that he preferred to observe from a distance. The girl admitted she felt the same way, saying that crowded places made her feel sick. The girl shifted the topic, asking how his automaton, Alice, was doing. Washio assured him Alice was fine, but the snake hinted that a problem was arising. The girl explained that while the guardians were powerful, they were also naive, making them vulnerable to being manipulated by people with bad intentions. She believed Washio would protect Alice and asked him to ensure Alice's happiness for their sake. For the first time, the girl revealed her eyes, which usually remained hidden. However, her gaze had an overwhelming effect, turning Washio to stone. While the girl and the snake were arguing, Arya and Alice came to the balcony. Alice had sensed that her master had been turned to stone and came to fix it. Arya asked what Washio was doing on the balcony and noticed the girl wearing revealing clothes. Washio's petrification was undone. Claudia then appeared, climbing up to the balcony and asking for Washio's help. She said Frederick was still chasing her. Frederick then showed up and saw the snake. He told her to stay away from him because he didn't like reptiles. Everyone at the party talked about how Washio seemed to get along well with monster girls. They also realized they had no chance of getting close to the girls since Washio already knew them from before. They even called Frederick impressive for getting close to them too. Limnoa didn't like what he was hearing and seeing. Then someone commented that Limnoa was still focused on his goal of becoming the homeroom teacher for the monster girls. He then offered Limnoa some help with it. Afterward, the renovation of the ghost tower was finished, and it was now the Washio faction's dormitory. Claudia excitedly asked Washio to check it out. Washio trembled and asked if the ghost tower was no longer haunted. Ira found it cute that he was scared of ghosts. Alice promised to protect her master no matter what. Meanwhile, a student with a reptilian tail walked toward somewhere. The ruins that once stood there were now repaired, and Washio was impressed by the transformation. He also noticed a large bathroom. Claudia explained that she had requested it so she could soak in the water with Washio, just like before. We saw an image of Washio in the bath with the monster kids. Washio reminded her that it wouldn't be appropriate now. Claudia insisted on taking a bath with him and offered to wash his back. Alice, who was watching Claudia, refused on Washio's behalf. She said washing her master's back was her job and told Claudia to back off. The two exchanged glares which could produce sparks. Arya stepped in and reminded them they needed to unpack and check the rooms. The group entered a large room and the girls suggested sharing it. Claudia teasingly told Washio they should share the room together. Alice refused again on Washio's behalf and claimed he would live with her in the basement. She tightly held Washio's arm and said it would be easier for magic supply that way. Washio exclaimed he understood and asked her to let go. Claudia noticed that Alice seemed jealous. Someone decided they would have a single room. Washio was surprised to see a new girl and asked who she was. Claudia introduced her as Molly Blime, another member of the Washio faction. They needed 3 members to form a faction. Molly asked everyone to call her Mob, a nickname that suited her since she was always around but went unnoticed. She had actually been following the group the whole time. Washio complained that she hadn't said anything. Molly then greeted Washio formally, and Claudia took her to unpack. Before leaving, Claudia gave Alice another glare. Later, Arya commented that Claudia seemed jealous of Alice. She told Claudia not to worry because Alice was an automaton. Claudia reminded her that Alice had the womb force 3080, which was concerning. Arya didn't care whether what Alice claimed was true or a trick about being able to reproduce, because she knew Washio wouldn't be easily swayed. She had known him for a long time. Arya then reminded Claudia that their real rivals were their former classmates. Claudia agreed, saying that everyone should have turned into monster girls like them by now. Knowing the others would come to the academy soon, Arya suggested using different strategies, not just relying on charm. Claudia argued that there was nothing wrong with using her charm. Deep down, Arya believed she would be the one to win Washio over in the end. Arya finished setting up her bed, and Claudia mentioned that it was too big. Arya explained that it was the standard size at her family's home. Claudia remembered that Arya came from a rich family. As the two argued, Molly wondered if she could get along with monster girls. Meanwhile, a monster girl with a reptile tail was walking down the street. Some drunk men were trying to flirt with a waitress at a nearby tavern. The reptile girl told the men to go bother someone else. She then breathed fire, burning the men's hair. When the drunk men realized she was a monster girl, they ran away, scared. The girl called them pathetic old men. The waitress thanked her, calling her a student monster. The girl corrected her, saying she was a monster girl who would be attending Washio's class at Inium Academy. She introduced herself as Draco. A new morning came, and Washio woke up to find Claudia on top of him. He was surprised and screamed, which woke up the rest of the group for breakfast. Later, in the faculty room, Limnoa was shocked to see Washio arrive at work on time. He was so surprised that he jokingly expected dragons to rain tomorrow. Washio agreed with him. Limnoa then realized someone else must have woken Washio up. Washio flinched, confirming Limnoa's guess. Limnoa told Washio that he didn't care how long he had been involved with the monster girls, but warned him to be careful about actions that might seem inappropriate. Washio agreed with this advice. Limnoa was glad that Washio understood and warned him to keep a proper distance, as he was an adult and should act with decorum. However, Limnoa doubted Washio would fully understand since he thought Washio had an E-ranked brain. Washio wanted to correct him, saying he was now D-rank, but he didn't mention it. Limnoa said he was only giving advice out of courtesy since they were colleagues. Washio thanked Limnoa and watched him leave. He was shocked that Limnoa had given him advice. It was rare, and Washio now fully agreed that dragons might indeed reign soon. The black-haired teacher from before sneaked up behind Washio and asked if he had a moment. Washio was surprised and asked what was wrong. Julius wanted to talk about the transfer student, but Washio had no idea who that was. Julius said he had asked Limnoa to tell Washio, but since Washio didn't know anything, Julius thought he was being pranked. He laughed and mentioned that the transfer student might be someone Washio already knew. At that moment, Draco walked into the faculty room. Washio started sweating when he saw Draco glaring at him. Julius told Draco to introduce herself. Draco introduced herself as one of the monsters Washio had saved in the past. Washio was shocked and asked if she was the same sleepy Draco he knew. Julius was right. They did know each other. He said he had already spoken to the principal about Draco joining Washio's class. Knowing Washio would now be responsible for 3 monster girls, Julius wished him good luck and left. Washio and Draco were left alone together. Washio started the conversation mentioning that it had been a while. He said he was happy to see how much she had grown and talked about how Tako and Kumo were also around, making him feel nostalgic. However, Draco didn't respond, which made Washio feel awkward. Washio then switched to monster language and asked Draco what he should call her now that she was a monster girl. Draco made a clicking sound with her tongue, which surprised Washio. He tried to convince himself that Draco was just acting rebellious, like how Tako and Kumo had been acting clingy. Washio then led Draco to the classroom. Claudia immediately recognized Draco and greeted her while grabbing her chest. Flustered, Draco asked Claudia to stop being clingy like she used to be. Claudia remembered that Draco hated hugs. She felt jealous seeing how much Draco had grown. Draco mentioned that Claudia had grown in the same way. Claudia replied that she was talking about height. Washio turned his gaze away, not wanting to watch the scene. Draco quietly observed him. While the classroom was noisy, Julius stood outside, wearing a chilling smile. Class started, and Washio talked about how monsters had their own food chain, with dragons at the top. The boys said it was worth attending biology class because they got to learn about how cool dragons were, and called it pure romance. A girl in class was scared to learn that something could even eat an A-ranked chimera. The others then looked at Draco, who was sleeping in class, and wondered if she could eat a chimera. They imagined her appearance would be really scary. The gossiping woke up Draco, and when she yawned, a fireball shot out of her mouth and burned the hair of the classmate sitting in front of her. Washio wished Draco would pay more attention in class. Draco interrupted the lecture and asked what exactly a monster was, wanting an explanation. The other students were shocked since the answer to her question was basic knowledge. Draco apologized for not knowing the basics and said she had been sleeping in class and didn't remember anything. Washio gave up and started explaining. He said a monster was a general term for creatures that suddenly appeared. 100 years ago, creatures once thought to be imaginary, like slimes and dragons, were suddenly seen all over the world. This event was called the Great Dark Night. Monsters had lower intelligence than humans, but had developed their own social structures. They admired those with greater abilities and called the strongest monster the Demon King. Washio told them to learn more about the Demon King in history class, where it would be discussed further. Draco said she somewhat understood monsters appearing out of nowhere. However, she told everyone to stop calling monsters dumb. She spread her wings and flew toward Washio to pin him down. She said it was disrespectful to the monsters. Seeing Draco glare and breathe fire made Washio tremble. He said he wouldn't know how to respond if she spoke to him like that. Draco paused, then smirked, which confused Washio. She called him lame for freaking out. The boys in the class were both scared and impressed by the dragon's presence. However, the girls were scared and remained silent, trembling. The bell rang and Washio ended the class. Draco, still sitting in her seat, stuck her tongue out at Washio. He felt hurt, but figured she was just going through a rebellious phase, different from Claudia and Arya. Just then, Arya rushed into the classroom and said something had happened to Claudia. Washio quickly ran to the nurse's office after hearing about the explosion in the alchemy class, and found Claudia with a severed tentacle. The nurse reassured him that Claudia would be fine, as the tentacle would grow back. Washio was relieved to hear that, and Claudia apologized. Washio told her she should apologize to her classmates instead. Claudia said that wasn't what she was apologizing for. With a look of despair on her face, she said she might get expelled. Draco, who had been listening from the hallway, took out a communication device and received a message. It said that they were making good progress and should move on to the next phase. The girls couldn't believe that Claudia would be expelled. Washio insisted that it couldn't be true because explosions happened all the time in alchemy class. He believed something like that wouldn't be enough to get her expelled. Meanwhile, Dorako stayed outside the room, silently watching and listening. Claudia's eyes looked dull and unfocused, but she snapped back to reality when Arya kept calling her name. Arya reassured her that she wouldn't be expelled, and Claudia felt relieved. Washio then asked if she was hurt, but Claudia told him she was fine. However, Washio wasn't convinced. He decided she was injured and told her to skip her afternoon classes. He also told her to write a reflection paper about the incident and submit it. As Arya and Washio walked away, Washio wondered if Claudia was actually struggling with alchemy. Arya found it odd as Claudia normally didn't have trouble with the subject. She explained that she had been sitting next to Claudia during the lesson, and while she had made some small mistakes, nothing serious had happened. However, at some point Claudia started zoning out. Washio thought she might have just lost focus, but Arya didn't see it that way. Washio then reminded Arya that Claudia had destroyed a tower before. If she messed up again, a written apology might not be enough to save her. Still, he promised to support her no matter what. Arya, on the other hand, wondered if Claudia had simply been distracted. But the way Claudia had acted earlier didn't feel like a simple distraction. The next day, Washio was called to the principal's office. The principal asked if he knew why he had been summoned. Washio assumed it was about Claudia, and Julius confirmed his guess. As the alchemy professor, Julius was also responsible for the incident, just like Washio. He then mentioned that someone else would be arriving soon. A man suddenly burst into the office, demanding to know who Washio was. He grabbed Washio and complained that one of Washio's students had bruised his daughter's face. The principal told him to calm down, but the man refused, shouting that he wouldn't relax until they brought out the person responsible. He wanted to punish them himself. Washio tried to apologize, but Julius spoke first. He took full responsibility for what happened in his alchemy class, and the man told him to make things right. Just then, some women spoke up saying there was another issue involving the monster girls and Washio. The PTA president then demanded that the principal should remove Washio from his teaching position. Washio was shocked. Julius, angry, asked why she was bringing this up so suddenly. The PTA president then revealed some documents she had received earlier. Meanwhile, in the students' lobby, Molly noticed that Claudia's octopus legs had already grown back. She was impressed, but Claudia reminded her that she had strong self-healing abilities. Molly then asked if Arya could do the same. Arya explained that she could heal, but only to a certain extent. Suddenly they realized that the other students were staring at them. A male student stepped forward and accused Claudia of causing the explosion the day before on purpose. Claudia denied it. The student then brought up an old rumor about Washio destroying a monster protection facility in the past. He asked if it was true. The girls froze and stared at him. Seeing their reaction, the student laughed, realizing the rumor must be true. He then called Washio a criminal and accused the monster girls of being his accomplices. Back in the principal's office, Julius read a document stating that Washio had once murdered the staff members at a monster protection facility, kidnapped young monsters, and brainwashed them. The document was anonymous, but the PTA president insisted it couldn't be ignored. She said the school had no choice but to investigate Washio's past, and depending on the results, he would be suspended. She then asked if anyone objected. Both Washio and the principal broke into a cold sweat. Julius, worried, asked Washio if the claims were true. Before Washio could respond, a loud noise came from outside. He quickly ran to check the student's lobby, and his eyes widened in shock. Arya, in her monster form, had attacked a student. However, the student was unharmed and only the lobby floor was damaged. Washio, furious, demanded to know what Arya was doing and ordered her to stop. With a cold voice, Arya said that no one else understood what they had been through or how much they had suffered. She claimed that Washio was the only one who had ever helped them. Molly turned to Claudia, asking her to stop Arya, but Claudia suddenly lost focus again. The other students started whispering, saying the rumors must be true. Their admiration for the monster girls turned into fear, and they no longer wanted to associate with them. Dorako remained silent, watching from the crowd. Meanwhile, Julius couldn't help but smile to himself. The PTA president declared that punishing Washio alone was no longer enough. She demanded disciplinary action against both monster girls as well, along with their homeroom teacher, Washio. Afterward, the principal decided to keep Washio and the two monster girls under house arrest in their rooms until the investigation was finished. They were not allowed to leave the Washio faction dorms for any reason. The next day, some students talked about how their families also received letters accusing Washio. They said the accusations were even worse than the accident in the alchemy class. They couldn't believe he was still working as a biology teacher. Some claimed that the monster girls were his victims, brainwashed by him. They assumed that was why the monster girls were so attached to Washio. Julius couldn't help but smile. He was confident that Washio would be taken down once the background check results came in. He also promised to recommend Limnoa as the new homeroom teacher for the monster girls. He argued that only an A-ranked teacher like Limnoa should be responsible for their education. Limnoa glared at him and Julius asked what was wrong. Limnoa reminded him that his request was only to replace Washio as the homeroom teacher, not to remove him from his position entirely or spread harmful rumors. He said Julius had gone too far. Julius was surprised. He hadn't expected Limnoa to care about something like this. Limnoa stared at him for a moment before walking away. Before leaving, he told Julius not to recklessly involve students in situations like this, and reminded him that, above all, they were teachers. Julius complained about how troublesome elves were. He couldn't stand them and asked Doriko what she thought. However, the dragon girl stayed silent. Julius wondered why she wasn't answering. Doriko then explained that the entire student body was spreading rumors and speaking badly about Washio everywhere. Julius was pleased to hear that and told her to spread the rumors outside the school as well. But Doriko refused to respond. Julius called her rude and said her attitude only made the rumors about Washio being unfit as a teacher seem more believable. However, there was nothing that could be done to change it. Doriko stared at him for a moment before asking what he truly hated, Washio or monster girls in general. Julius dismissed it as a pointless question. Instead, he asked her what she thought was the most beautiful emotion. Doriko was confused and asked why he was suddenly bringing that up. Julius said it wasn't love or hope. He claimed the most beautiful emotion was despair. The moment when light disappeared from someone's eyes, when they lost all hope and sank into darkness, he believed that was when humans showed their true beauty. Then he asked Doriko for her thoughts. Doriko simply said his stories never made sense. Julius realized she would never understand, since fools never did. Alice visited Washio's room in the Washio faction's dorms, bringing him hot milk with honey. She explained that it could help him relax, but she used complicated words. The guardian girl and the snake appeared, curious about what Alice was saying. The snake questioned why a grown man was sulking. She told Washio to speak up if something was bothering him, promising to solve his problem. However, Washio stayed silent. Annoyed, the snake demanded that he say something. Alice knelt beside him and gently asked if he would be willing to share his past with her. Washio responded that maybe he would someday. Understanding his feelings, Alice wished him a good night and left the room. Washio then lay down on his bed and went to sleep. In the past, a young Washio had just arrived in a new world through a summoning ritual. The people around him cheered, celebrating the arrival of a hero from another world. Confused, Washio looked around, wondering if this was some kind of prank by cosplayers. A beautiful woman leaned toward him, calling him a hero. She asked for his name. Nervously, Washio introduced himself as Makoto Washio. The woman smiled, saying his name sounded wonderful, and suddenly declared that she was in love. She then pleaded with him to use his great power to protect their nation from monsters and lead them to victory. Washio could hardly believe what he was hearing. Monsters? Molly worried about Washio and Claudia staying in their room all day and wondered if they were okay. The snake didn't know much about the octopus girl, but she said the old man was definitely sulking. Alice then walked up to the silent Aria and asked if she could at least share something about Washio's past. Aria explained that she first met Washio when he was known as the Golden Eagle, the highest-ranking mage summoned from another world. She said Washio had saved her life on the battlefield when she was a dying monster. To her, he was her savior. In the past, a young Washio encountered a caged lion-like monster with a snake for a tail. He was shocked to see such a creature. A man confirmed it was indeed a beast, and a woman from before stated that this was the kind of monster Washio would have to fight. Washio refused, insisting there was absolutely no way he could do it. He said he was just an ordinary office worker with no combat experience. The woman jokingly wondered if he was related to a lizard man or something. Washio told them to stop messing around and demanded to be sent back to Japan. He had work the next day, and if he missed it, his boss would scold him for 2 hours straight. The man ignored his protests and began explaining their situation. He said their kingdom had been under attack by monsters for the past 5 years. They had been fighting back, but things only kept getting worse. That was why they decided to summon someone with great magical power from another world to help turn the tide of battle. The woman then pointed out that this was where Washio came in. The man explained that Washio would need to learn as many spells as possible, lead the front lines, reclaim lost cities, and eliminate the monsters. Washio couldn't believe they were serious. The two left him behind, saying they had high hopes for him as a hero from another world. He was left alone to get used to the overwhelming presence of the monster in front of him. Washio got a room and collapsed onto his bed. He could hardly believe he had been summoned to another world. The thought of fighting monsters seemed impossible. He was just a salaryman after all. There was no way he could handle such a task. But there was no point in dwelling on it now. What was done was done. He recalled a saying, "Live each day as if your life has just begun." With that in mind, he decided to make the best of his new life. Just then, a soldier entered the room, carrying tea for Washio before bed. Washio asked who he was. The soldier introduced himself as Skara, a second-class soldier from the 3rd Division. He explained that he would be supporting Washio from now on. His job was to help ease Washio's fatigue from training, even offering massages. He also planned to show him around the kingdom, recommend good restaurants, and take care of odd jobs for him. Washio felt that Skara was taking his role a bit too seriously. He stared at him for a moment and realized Skara was waiting for an order, almost like a loyal pet. Deciding to go along with it, Washio asked for a restaurant recommendation. Without hesitation, Skara confirmed he knew one, then, without warning, dragged Washio out into the night. The days passed. Washio practiced magic, spent time with Skara, exercised, and collected items to help him use magic. Before long, he started complaining about how tired he was, so Skara gave him a shoulder massage. Washio playfully called him by the wrong name, and Skara quickly corrected him. Then Skara reminded him that the next day was the day they would reclaim the city. He also warned Washio not to be late since he had a habit of showing up late. Washio promised he wouldn't mess things up. After a moment of silence, he asked Skara if he had any experience on the battlefield and whether it was scary. Skara admitted it was, since his life was always at risk. Washio nodded, saying that made sense, but pointed out that Skara didn't seem like a frontline fighter. He promised to protect him. Skara reminded him that he was only there for support, and that Washio was the one on the front lines. He reassured him, saying he would have his back. Washio jokingly called him chivalrous. Then he asked Skara to stop being so formal with him, reminding him that they were friends. Skara froze for a moment before slowly turning to look at Washio. He asked if they were friends. Washio knew that Skara was just being kind because of his support role, but he actually thought Skara was a cool guy and wanted to be friends. Skara felt happy and hoped they could get closer outside of their missions too. He asked if he could call Washio casually, and Washio easily agreed. Skara smiled and suggested they grab some food together after the operation. However, Washio said that sounded like a red flag. Confused, Skara asked what he meant. Washio simply explained that it was just internet slang. Years passed and Skara kept fighting on the front lines. Washio, now looking like he was in his 20s, used his magic to blow up monsters one after another. The explosions shined brightly. He glanced at Skara, but suddenly the image of him shattered like fragile glass. Washio woke up, gasping for air and drenched in cold sweat. It had only been a nightmare. Clenching his fists, he swore to protect the monsters in Skara's place. Meanwhile, in another tower, Julius sat with a smile on his face. On his lap sat Dorako, his lifeless eyes empty like a doll's. Was this the real mastermind, the one brainwashing people all along? Bro thinks he is a harem hentai protagonist with that hair. The next morning, Dorako went to the Washio faction dorms and told Arya to call Washio because the principal wanted to see him. Later in the principal's office, Julius read a document about Washio's past. According to the report, Washio had been part of the Prodigious Kingdom's Magic Corps and took part in an urban reclamation mission. During that operation, they raided a monster sanctuary and took 6 creatures from there. These monsters were then subjected to brainwashing in an attempt to turn them into living weapons for war. Julius stated that these were the findings and asked Washio if they were true. Washio remained silent. He remembered the time he discovered that humans had been experimenting on young monsters. One of them was a young octopus. He admitted that the report was accurate. The other teachers were shocked and said the accusation matched the report exactly. They called it a horrifying act. The principal, unable to respond, simply broke into a cold sweat. The PTA president then declared that someone like Washio had no place in education. For the sake of the students, she demanded his immediate dismissal. Washio did not argue. He only clenched his fist in silence. Meanwhile, Dorako sat back and enjoyed her tea while watching Arya, who looked troubled. She asked why Arya seemed so down. Arya explained that she was worried about Washio and hoped the misunderstanding would be cleared up. Dorako told her she was being too protective of the old man. Arya then asked if Dorako wasn't even a little worried about Washio. Dorako shot her a glare and said she wasn't, since it didn't matter to her whether he quit teaching or what happened next. Just then, Claudia stepped out of her room. Arya called Dorako cold-hearted for acting this way during such a serious situation, especially when it involved their mentor, the very person who had saved their lives. Dorako stayed quiet for a moment before suddenly bursting into laughter, leaving Arya confused. She called Arya an idiot, then smirked. Slamming her foot on the table, Dorako leaned in close and told Arya to wake up already. She reminded her that their very existence was what was truly tormenting Washio. Arya stared at her, unsure of what she meant. Washio entered the dorm looking drained and empty. Dorako said it was perfect timing and suggested asking him directly. She asked if he believed the whole commotion happened because of them, the monster girls. Washio stared at them in silence. His reaction made Arya uneasy. As he looked at them, memories of the past flooded his mind, back when the monsters were still young. Then in a cold voice he agreed. It was all their fault. His words cut through Arya like a blade. He went on, saying he had worked hard to keep his past hidden and live a quiet, unnoticed life. But because they stayed close to him, everything was exposed. He admitted that he regretted saving them back then. Arya froze. She couldn't say a word. Then tears streamed down her face. Without another glance, Washio turned and walked away. Dorako asked if she understood now. Just then, Claudia entered the living room and saw Washio. He gave a cold farewell before leaving. Afterward, the students were surprised when Washio was fired in the end. They couldn't believe that an ordinary-looking old man like him had brainwashed people and even killed them. They said he deserved to be expelled since he was a psycho. Some wondered if the monster girls would stay behind and continue their studies at the school. Washio gathered his things and walked away. Before he left, Limnoa confronted him. Washio called him kind for seeing him off and officially asked him to take over as the homeroom teacher for the monster girls. He said the girls might act spoiled sometimes, but he promised they were good kids. Limnoa then asked if Washio had really brainwashed the monster girls. Washio confirmed that it was true. Limnoa, who had mocked Washio for a long time, said that if the report was correct, then he completely despised him. After that, the two rivals went their separate ways. Classes had resumed, and Limnoa took over as the homeroom teacher for the monster girls. However, Arya and Claudia stayed completely silent, refusing to respond to him. Despite their silence, Limnoa continued with homeroom. He reminded them that the Washio faction had been disbanded and told them to leave the tower immediately. He also announced that he would be teaching biology. After finishing his announcements, he asked if they had any questions, but as expected, the monster girls ignored him. Limnoa told them that sulking wouldn't change anything and reminded them that the first period was linguistics. He asked them not to be late and then left the classroom. During the break, Limnoa went to the cafeteria and let out a deep sigh. Suddenly, Julius appeared out of nowhere and asked how it felt to be the monster girls' homeroom teacher. However, he was only joking since he had already seen how difficult the girls had been. He admitted that they could be childish, but warned that ignoring them wouldn't work. Then he handed Limnoa a potion, saying it could be used to tame monsters. Limnoa shot him a glare and said he didn't need such a thing. His words alone would be enough to win them over. He also warned Julius not to forget that the girls were still monsters. Julius groaned, complaining about how much trouble elves could be. Just then, Molly arrived to deliver the classroom logbook. Julius thanked her and asked her to return the graded homework to the students when she had the chance. Later, in the Washio faction's tower, the girls cleaned up the place. Time seemed to pass quickly and they realized they had just unpacked not long ago. They weren't sure what to do with the things Washio left behind, especially since they didn't know where he was. Claudia suggested throwing everything away. The snake, looking worried, asked them not to throw out the grimoire since it was a historic treasure. The guardian girl also asked them not to abandon the items. However, Molly pointed out that no one else could use them anymore. Arya remembered that Washio had already handed over all the research presentations. Now that their faction was gone, there was no reason to continue the research. Just then, Frederick arrived to help his honey bunny with packing. Claudia seemed uneasy about his presence. Frederick promised to heal her heart after Washio's departure, but Claudia complained that he was standing too close. She said she would gather Washio's belongings and send them to him. However, she quickly changed her mind, realizing it would only bother Washio. Frederick, noticing her hesitation, could tell she still wanted to see Washio. Claudia laughed it off, saying that it was a mistake to come to the academy, and she wouldn't interfere in Washio's life anymore. Something about her words and expression unsettled Frederick. Claudia then asked the others to help her organize the remaining items. Frederick said he didn't like how Claudia looked at that moment and knew she still believed in Washio. He was sure Washio was innocent and suggested that they work together to uncover the truth. Molly then asked what Frederick would gain from doing so. Frederick simply replied that their smiles would be his reward. The snake called him cheesy, while the guardian girl said it sounded like something from a romance opera. Claudia stayed silent for a moment, remembering the times when Washio had cared for them. Molly raised her hand, saying she supported uncovering the truth because the rumors she had heard were ridiculous and made her frustrated. Arya also agreed. Washio's last words had hurt her, but she felt the need to know the truth. Seeing their determination, Claudia finally looked at them and decided to join them. Everyone went to the living room to talk about the situation. Frederick placed the accusation letters on the table and suggested that they should first figure out who sent them. The snake asked what they would do after that, and Frederick simply said they should ask the sender about their reasons. The only clue they had was that the letters were typed with a typewriter. Since there was no handwriting to analyze, finding the sender would be difficult. Arya quickly pointed to Limnoa as a suspect because he often bothered Washio. Frederick couldn't believe Arya was still holding a grudge. Molly carefully examined the letters. After a moment, she noticed something familiar and said it might be Julius. She pointed out that he had a habit of adding a dot at the end of sentences, something she had seen before on a graded assignment. However, Frederick argued that this alone wasn't enough proof. Arya also reminded them that they didn't even know if the sender was a teacher. Just then, the snake asked if the Julius they were talking about was the pharmacology teacher. If so, she said, he was a likely suspect because she could smell a faint trace of chemicals on the letter. Frederick, however, doubted that a snake's sense of smell would be reliable evidence. The snake felt insulted by his words. Despite Frederick's doubts, everyone believed the snake and decided to check Julius's private room. When they entered, they found a messy space filled with growing herbs and bottles of chemicals. The snake said that Julius might have been the one who sent the accusation letters, and that there could be proof in his room. She suggested sneaking in to look for a typewriter or anything that could be connected to the letters. While Claudia, Arya, Frederick, and the snake went inside to search, Molly and the snake girl stayed outside to keep watch. Everyone inside the room searched carefully, feeling tense and uneasy. After some time, Claudia found a typewriter. The snake checked it and said it smelled the same as the letters and used the same kind of ink. Arya then asked Frederick for one of the letters. She looked at it and noticed the fonts matched. The snake said this was solid proof. They also saw that the wax seal on the letter was the same. The snake was happy that they were finding more and more physical evidence. All they needed now was a draft of the letter to make their case stronger. But when they looked through the trash, there was nothing useful. Then Claudia spotted something. It wasn't a draft, but 2 reports about Washio's past. One report said that Washio didn't attack a monster protection center, but a monster experimentation lab. It also said he saved 6 young monsters from the place. Arya said that part was true, but calling it an experimentation lab made it sound softer than it really was. The other report said Washio attacked and kidnapped from a monster protection facility. The snake checked it and said it had the same ink smell as the accusation letter. She believed this was a fake report made by Julius. Claudia started crying as she remembered the time when Washio rescued them. Arya stayed quiet for a moment and said that everything felt a little too perfect, like they had walked into a trap. The snake suggested they should take the evidence and leave quickly. Arya confirmed that Julius had returned thanks to the shared vision with the snake girl. Molly tried to stop him by asking something related to their recent lesson, but Julius said it could wait. Molly couldn't stop him. Even the snake girl couldn't do anything and apologized. The snake admitted she already knew and finally said it was too late to get away. Julius opened the door and walked straight to the corner of the room. The others stayed hidden under the table right beneath the typewriter. Everyone held their breath while Julius moved around the room. Frederick, who was awkwardly stuck between the girls, looked especially tense. Julius stood in front of the typewriter for a while. Then his footsteps slowly faded as he left the room and closed the door. Once it was quiet, everyone crawled out from under the table. The snake felt relieved that they weren't caught. Arya told them they should hurry and leave before Julius came back. While crawling, Claudia noticed a small space under the floor. Arya told her not to waste time and keep moving. They thought they could finally report everything to the principal and clear Washio's name. But when they opened the door, they were shocked to see Julius standing right outside, smiling in a way that made them all freeze. Julius grabbed Molly and pushed her back into the room. He said he was surprised they had noticed the smell of the ink and entered his room earlier than he had planned. Then he locked the door behind them. He said he was glad they had gathered all the evidence. He admitted he had been worried they might figure things out, since it was pretty obvious. But now he felt relieved because he believed they were too easy to fool. The girls grew more afraid. Frederick then told Julius to take responsibility for what he had done, now that they had the proof. Julius didn't say anything. For some reason, Claudia started acting strangely and seemed lost in thought. Arya saw her walking toward Julius and asked what she was doing. Claudia didn't answer. Instead, she handed over all the evidence they had collected and gave it back to Julius. Claudia's head felt cloudy and she couldn't move on her own. All she could see was Washio praising her for being a good girl after returning the papers. Arya called out to her, but Claudia barely noticed. She also saw that Frederick and Molly weren't moving either. They had the same blank, distant expression she did. The snake asked what Julius had done to them. Arya began to transform slowly, realizing they were under some kind of mental attack. She demanded to know what Julius had done. Julius smiled as he noticed Arya getting ready to fight. He quickly used magic to tie her hands behind her back and forced her to kneel. Julius explained that his magic didn't work well on monsters, so he had to catch them while they still looked human. Arya asked why she had been left unconscious. Julius didn't answer directly. Instead, he burned the evidence they had found during their investigation. Arya watched in despair as the important file turned into ashes. She started crying. Julius collected her tears and tasted them. He said it still wasn't enough despair. He confessed that he loved despair. To him, despair was a gift, something only people who were aware of themselves could truly feel. Like someone completely obsessed, he listed different types of despair he had studied. He focused on the despair of monster girls and said he found it fascinating. He asked Arya to show him more of that beautiful despair. Then he tried to stab her with something sharp. But the snake suddenly jumped out of Claudia and bit Julius, making him drop the syringe he was holding. Angry, Julius threw the snake away. Somehow, the bite snapped Claudia out of her trance. She could think clearly again. Arya asked what the syringe was for. Julius replied that it would only hurt for a second. Before he could try again, Claudia used her octopus leg to stop his hand. She told him to stay away from them. Julius gave her a harsh look and Claudia fell back into a daze. Her head turned cloudy again and she couldn't move her body. The snake warned her to run, but Julius stepped on her before she could act. He walked closer to her and told her to be a good girl and stay still while he used the syringe on her instead. At that moment, someone suddenly pushed the door open hard. Julius asked if she had forgotten how to open doors properly. It was Draco, and she said she came to invite Julius to eat with her. Julius looked surprised for a moment but then laughed. He said it was rare for her to ask him out and agreed to come after getting ready. He snapped his fingers, and that seemed to wake everyone else in the room from a daze. Molly and Frederick looked around feeling dizzy and confused about what had just happened. Arya tried to ask Draco a question, but Draco gave her a sharp look and warned her not to dig any deeper. Claudia then shouted that it was Julius who had blamed their mentor unfairly. She asked if Draco didn't even care about clearing Washiyo's name. Draco told them to stop bringing up Washiyo and said that if they cared about him so much, they should just stop following her. Claudia took that seriously and ran off, saying she would go see Washiyo herself. The other girls were left confused. Arya said it was just like Claudia to do that. Draco laughed and agreed, saying the octopus hadn't changed at all since then. She then told Arya that Washiyo was really in trouble and that it was their turn to help him now. Arya agreed. Meanwhile, Washiyo was looking out the window. Alice came in to tell him that the bath was ready and he thanked her. She offered to wash his back, but Washiyo said he could handle it himself. Alice replied that it was her job to help him feel better and that human touch was sometimes the best comfort. She reminded him again that she had the ability to reproduce and opened her arms and legs. She tried to pull him toward the bed, but Washiyo refused. After that scene, Washiyo went to set up the beds. Once he was done, he went downstairs to tell the manager. Alice also told the manager that all the rooms were clean. The old man thanked both of them. They wondered if any customers would come. The old man explained that the inn was located on an old highway where not many people passed by, so it wasn't likely. Still, they ended up getting one customer. Washiyo did his best to welcome them. The old man noticed Washiyo's effort and said he was hardworking and young. Washiyo said he wasn't young and that working at an inn just fit him better. The old man remembered that Washiyo used to be the quiet and boring teacher at the Magic Academy. Washiyo said he liked this kind of calm life more. He explained that being responsible for students' futures was really tiring. He was thankful to be hired as a full-time worker at the inn. The old man said he only wanted younger people around. Washiyo repeated that he wasn't young anymore. Then the old man left the front desk and headed to the kitchen. Alice asked if the old man really meant what he said. Washiyo said he was truly thankful, but Alice said that's not what she was asking. Washiyo explained again how much he wanted to work at an inn and greet visitors. Alice pointed out that she was actually talking about Claudia and Arya. She knew he regretted leaving the academy. Washiyo started to sweat and denied it, but Alice could tell he was lying. Washiyo then went outside to smoke. He admitted to himself that he did regret it. He regretted not leaving the academy sooner. His work history was half true and half nonsense, but he no longer cared about what was real and what was not. Once people started to suspect him, he ended up bringing trouble to the girls as well. That was the reason he decided to cut ties with them. He wanted them to live happy lives without any connection to him. From the start, he felt that teaching was never the right job for someone like him. Letting go of the responsibility for his students' futures brought him a deep sense of relief. Even so, he knew that both he and the girls had gone too far, and he probably ended up hurting them more than he meant to. Alice asked again if her master truly didn't want anything more to do with the girls. Washiyo stayed silent for a while before saying it was the best choice for their sake. Alice understood his reason, but deep down, she only agreed with about 64% of it. That night, Alice checked on her master while he struggled through nightmares. She quietly promised to stay with him until the very end. The next morning, Washiyo was calmly sweeping the front of the inn when he heard loud footsteps. He turned around and was suddenly met with someone running straight at him. Claudia rushed in and slammed into him with her full body weight. She began hitting him while calling him names. Washiyo was confused and asked why she had come. Claudia said she had followed the scent of his cologne and was surprised that he had been so close. Washiyo admitted he had no money left. Claudia called him pathetic and began crying. She asked why he had lied and caused her pain. Feeling her tears fall on his face, Washiyo finally apologized. Still, Claudia hit him again, making it clear she would never forgive him. Afterward, Alice gave Claudia some tea, but Claudia didn't want to let go of Washiyo. She was afraid he might run away again. Alice said it would be hard to have a serious talk like that and asked her to let go. Claudia didn't listen and kept holding on to him tightly, just like she used to when she was younger. A little later, Washio found out that his background records had been faked. Claudia also told them that Julius had tried to inject her with something and she thought he was really frightening. When Washio saw what Claudia was holding, he tried to run away, but his back gave out and he fell to the ground. Claudia apologized for holding him too tightly and said she would carry him to the academy. Before she could do that, Alice stepped in and lifted Washio in her arms like a princess. She also told Claudia to hold on to her because the trip would only take 30 minutes. Alice turned on her engines at full power, and the three of them quickly left the inn. They flew fast through the sky. During the flight, Washio explained that Julius wanted to activate something called the monstral factor in the monster girls. Alice said her database had no record of that term and asked for more information. Washio said the monstral factor was like a trigger that turned normal creatures into monsters. When too much of it entered the body, it caused a big change in their physical form and made them lose control of their behavior. This process was known as monsterization. Claudia became worried about those who had been injected. Washio said the monster girls probably wouldn't fully turn into monsters again, but if the factor became active, they could lose control of their actions. He remembered that the person who led the research facility was a powerful wizard in the kingdom named Silver Crow. That person turned out to be Julius Spector, a drug that activated the monstral factor, and a man named Julius. It couldn't have been a random connection. Washio felt bad for not realizing it sooner, or maybe he had just chosen to ignore it. Claudia then asked if the lab Washio was talking about had been the one they were part of. Washio confirmed it and added that their memories had been locked away, which is why Julius's name didn't seem familiar. He had been running away from his past. But now he had finally decided to face it. Washio continued talking about what happened before, but Alice suddenly made some sharp turns which made him feel dizzy and sick. At the same time, Arya kept asking Draco about her true goal. Frederick also questioned whether she was an ally or an enemy. Draco repeated that they should stay out of her business. Suddenly a voice from above filled the air. It was Claudia, checking if Draco was all right. Alice slowly landed on the ground and Washio quickly ran over to Draco. He was alarmed and said that Julius was after Draco. He tried to pull her away from the area, worried for her safety, but Draco told him she was fine. Washio couldn't believe it and felt he couldn't just leave someone important to him in such a dangerous place. Then without warning, Draco pulled her hand away. Washio looked back and was shocked to see Julius standing right behind her, holding her tightly. He had a threatening smile on his face. Julius questioned if Draco was really that important to Washio. He claimed she had already been injected with the drug many times and was now just a puppet under his control. He said he wanted to watch her fall apart with one more dose. Draco groaned in pain, and Washio became extremely worried. Arya told Frederick to hurry and bring the other teachers. Everyone nearby began getting ready for what was coming next. Draco kept groaning in pain, but then she suddenly stuck out her tongue, showing that she had only been pretending. She said there was no way someone as strong as her would lose control because of some drug. She explained that she had really hoped to end all this without getting Washio involved, but it looked like she no longer had a choice. She decided it was time to end things once and for all. Washio stood there still confused while Julius continued to smile in that same creepy way. Draco pointed out that Julius was now surrounded by monster girls, including Washio, and told her to stop trying. Washio didn't understand what was happening and looked confused. Draco then complained that Washio was ruining her moment. Arya and Claudia were shocked to find out that Draco had actually been on their side the whole time. Draco apologized for not telling them earlier. She hadn't wanted them to get involved if she could avoid it, but they ended up finding out anyway. Then she revealed her real identity and showed them an armband. Washio thought he had seen it somewhere before. Arya said it was a symbol used by enforcers. Julius added that the pin also had the kingdom's crest on it, which meant Draco wasn't just any enforcer. She was working under special orders from the royal family, as part of a group called the Order. Draco confirmed it was true. She said she had enrolled in the school to investigate Julius. According to her, 20 years ago, Julius had stolen research results from the Monstral Factor project and ran away. She believed he was the same person now working as instructor Julius Spector. She said she had already collected a lot of evidence and even thanked him for injecting her multiple times. She wondered if he was surprised that the factor hadn't activated in her body. Claudia asked how she got injected. Draco replied that it happened 3 or 4 times but told them not to worry. In fact, she said her skin and scales looked shinier than before. The other girls became jealous and hoped they could get injected too so their acne would go away. But Draco told them to forget about it, since she had gone through special training that they hadn't. She explained that when someone got the factor activator, their muscles would first spasm all at once. After that, they would feel so weak and tired that they couldn't even move. At the end, she turned to Julius and asked if her acting had been perfect. Julius stayed quiet for a while as he remembered something. He said he had really been tricked. He couldn't believe that the date they had and all the kindness she showed were just an act. He even said that she kissed him. The others were shocked. Draco called him shameless and shouted that it wasn't true. The girls couldn't believe Draco had gone that far just for an investigation. Washio warned Julius that what he did was a crime. Draco promised Washio that she never kissed Julius. Then she told everyone to stop wasting time and told Julius to give up and accept that he was getting arrested. Julius smirked and asked if she really thought she had beaten him. He said the activators that were injected into Draco were something he had improved little by little. He claimed they were finally ready and snapped his fingers. Right then, Draco started to feel hot and shaky. Her eyes lost focus. Washio tried to calm her down, but Draco's hands began to change and she glared and hissed at Washio. She let out a loud roar as dark magic started coming out of her and spread across the school. Claudia asked what the dark stuff was. Arya wondered if Draco had lost control. Julius said it was amazing. He shouted that his experiment worked and told them to show even more fear, laughing like the madman he was. While Limnoa helped the students evacuate, he reminded them of their safety rules. He had no idea what was really going on. Draco was still out of control, and more of her dragon-like features started to appear. She gathered flames in her mouth and released a powerful blast of fire. The other monster girls tried to stop her and asked her to calm down. Julius said it was no use because their voices couldn't reach Draco anymore. He admitted he didn't even have a way to stop the monstral factor from going wild. He wondered if Washio would keep hiding his powers even now. While his own student had turned into a raging dragon, he said it was only a matter of time before the school, and even the city, would be burned down. According to him, only the Golden Eagle could stop the chaos and defeat the dragon. He looked forward to seeing Washio fall into despair. Washio kept trying to reach out to Draco, telling her not to give in, but it didn't work. Alice began flying when she saw Draco grab Washio and throw him to the ground. Claudia called out to him, but luckily Alice managed to save him just in time. Washio looked back at Draco and asked her to return to them, but the dragon girl didn't respond and got ready to release another blast of fire. Arya quickly used her webs to seal Draco's mouth and hold her in place. Claudia then tried to knock her out with a surprise attack, but Draco sensed her from behind and used her fire to cut off Claudia's octopus legs. Draco turned toward the school and blasted her fire at the buildings and towers, destroying everything in her path. Limnoa and the students froze in fear as they watched the school burn. Draco stepped out from the smoke, revealing the true power of a dragon. Arya couldn't believe such strength was even possible. Claudia cried and begged Draco to return to normal. Draco charged up for another flame breath and Arya told Claudia to run, but Arya stood frozen as she watched Draco release the flames. Shockingly, Claudia survived. When she opened her eyes, she saw a huge monster with strong muscles standing in front of her, shielding her. She wondered where those muscles came from. Julius asked Washio if he was really sure about showing his magic like this. He warned him that the kingdom would now go after him. But Washio didn't care. He had already planned to disappear and take on another identity like before. Then he told Julius that a true teacher never uses students for their own gain. A real teacher protects their students with everything they have. At that moment, Washio finally released the magic power he had kept hidden all along. He asked Draco if she could hear him, but she didn't answer. Instead, she launched a long-range attack. Washio's imp blocked and pushed the attack away with ease. Washio called out to Draco, telling her to wait because he was going to save her no matter what. Julius reminded him again that once someone turned into a rampaging monster, there was no way to bring them back. The only solution now was to end it. A magic blast flew past Julius's cheek. Washio told him again that it was a teacher's duty to protect their students no matter what, and insisted he return Draco to normal. Julius replied that even he didn't know how to do that. Draco kept burning everything in sight with her fire breath. Washio asked her again to calm down. He even pushed away the attacks coming toward him without much effort, but his words didn't reach her. She kept attacking and wouldn't stop. At this point, he had no choice but to treat her like a monster. He decided to try something and fired a blast toward Draco. She blocked it with her wings. Arya was shocked by what Washio had just done, but Claudia pointed out that his magic had no effect on Draco. In fact, it made things worse. The dragon girl transformed even further. Alice then explained that a dragon's scales were strong enough to block magical attacks. The only way to defeat a dragon was to use guns or powerful spells to break through its defense. She knew that with his imp, Washio could break through the barrier. But if he did, it would seriously hurt Draco. Julius appeared behind them to give a quick lesson. He asked what they thought was the strongest weapon of an almighty dragon. Was it the magic barrier or the great physical strength? He said the real answer was the dragon's flame breath. Right then, a powerful blast of fire hit Washio. Claudia called out to him, but Alice calmly said he would be fine. She explained that a person wouldn't die unless they directly touched the dragon's fire, which burned at thousands of degrees. However, staying too long in the hot air could increase the risk of death. Breathing in the smoke and carbon monoxide could also cause dizziness, nausea, trouble breathing, and even suffocation. The dragon's fire could be seen as a type of poison breath. But none of that bothered Washio. He casually walked out of the smoke and complained that he couldn't see anything. Alice said her master had protected himself not just from the fire, but also by controlling the air and moisture around him. She wasn't surprised since he used to be a biology teacher. At that moment, Alice and Claudia took the chance to attack the strange teacher behind them. They hit him at close range. Julius joked that they were scary for attacking him right after making sure Washio was safe. For some reason, Claudia didn't feel like she had really touched him. Alice then launched missiles from under her skirt, hitting Julius again. But he still looked completely fine. Seeing that nothing worked, the girls asked what Julius really was. Just then, Limnoa stepped forward and explained what an astral body meant. He said it was a state where someone continued to exist without a physical body, only as a spirit. That was why the tentacles and missiles didn't work. Julius had no real body. Limnoa said it was his first time seeing something like this. Arya asked him what he meant. Limnoa's face grew serious as he looked at Yolkius. He said Julius was probably already dead. Then Julius suddenly disappeared, surprising Arya. Limnoa could only guess that Julius was a lich, a powerful type of undead who had moved beyond having a normal body. Among those creatures, Julius might be one of the strongest. Limnoa finally said Julius was likely a lifeless king, an elder lich. If that was true, then beating him would be nearly impossible. At the same time, someone got blasted through a building. Washio felt a bit hurt but still called out to Draco again. She didn't respond and instead blasted him with her fire breath. Washio quickly used his magic ring to create a barrier and protect himself, but the fire breath split into several blasts and destroyed the buildings behind him. He realized that if this kept going, the entire city could be ruined. He then saw Draco opening her mouth again to attack. Thinking fast, Washio used a haste spell on himself to boost his speed and ran away from her flames. He wasn't just escaping. He was leading her to aim at a different area, away from the city. Meanwhile, Alice was still fighting Julius, but her missiles passed right through him like he wasn't even there. Arya also tried using lightning magic, but it didn't work either. Julius stood calmly, smiling, which made Arya feel even more frustrated. She realized their attacks really didn't work on him at all. Julius said their efforts were useless because both physical and magical attacks couldn't hurt him. He reminded them of what Limnoa had said, that no one could harm him. Then he suddenly vanished and reappeared behind Claudia. He whispered that even the powers of the monster girls couldn't touch him. Claudia quickly struck back with her tentacles, but just like before, nothing happened. She got angry and asked Limnoa what to do about someone with an astral body. She said it felt gross not being able to hit anything. Limnoa explained that an astral body was a spiritual form, the opposite of a physical body. In other regions, people called it the spirit within the soul. It existed in the astral world and couldn't normally be touched from the physical world. Claudia didn't get it at all. Arya was more upset by the fact that these astral beings could touch humans, but humans couldn't fight back. Then Alice suggested using sacred magic. Limnoa agreed that sacred magic was a weakness of the undead, but because Julius was an astral being, landing a clean hit with sacred magic was still very hard. In the end, the girls came to one conclusion. Julius seemed completely unbeatable. Just then, something almost hit the girls. It came from Julius, who now looked more like an undead. Claudia noticed smoke coming from nearby and saw that a large rock was melting. Alice confirmed it was a corrosive gas spell and warned everyone not to breathe it in. At the same time, the gas started to eat away at their clothes. Alice said it was meant to be an embarrassing kind of attack. Julius stood there, staring at them like a crazed, lifeless man. Meanwhile, Washio kept dodging Draco's fast and powerful strikes. After watching carefully, he found the perfect moment and jumped high toward her. He reached out, trying to get close, but Draco suddenly swung her tail and knocked him away. However, the Washio she hit disappeared into smoke. It had only been a mirage. The real Washio used that chance to grab her and hold her in his arms. Draco's dark eyes slowly began to brighten. Washio quietly told her that everything was okay now. As Washio held Draco close and used telepathy, he entered Draco's consciousness. Inside, he found the young Draco surrounded by dark figures. She cried while asking them not to come closer. She tried to run away but could not move. Washio walked toward her and touched one of the dark figures. All of them disappeared right away like dust. Draco stopped crying when she saw him and jumped into his arms. Washio said it had been a long time and apologized for making her wait. Draco pressed against him and said it was fine. A teenage Draco then opened her eyes. Tears rolled down her face as she felt the warmth from Washio's hug. She trembled and apologized for what she had done. Washio told her it was fine because things like that happened when teaching growing students. Draco touched his face and nervously asked if he still remembered her. Washio said it was clear and pointed out how much she had grown. Draco smiled and said she was happy. She hugged him again and reminded him that she was Radon, the monster girl he had saved before. Meanwhile, the fight against Julius continued. The girl's attacks did not work because his body stayed intangible. Arya felt frustrated since Julius acted like an invincible enemy. Alice thought they would be overwhelmed if things kept going. Claudia wondered if Julius even had a weakness. Limnoa confirmed that he did. He explained that elder leeches could not fully change into an astral form. Their souls still needed to exist in some shape nearby so the astral body could receive magic power. In most cases, it was an accessory or something worn close to the body. However, for some time, Limnoa's magic detection sensed nothing. Julius kept attacking, yet Limnoa casually avoided each strike while explaining. He questioned where the soul vessel could be. He guessed it was hidden somewhere not too far away, but they did not have much time to search. He asked the girls if they had any instinct about the location. Arya wondered what he meant. Julius grew annoyed that they were discussing strategy in front of him. He called them careless and struck at Claudia. Limnoa managed to save her and took the attack instead. Claudia froze when she saw a hole in Limnoa's shoulder. Cold sweat formed on her skin. Limnoa insisted that the wound was nothing important. Instead, he told them to focus on finding Julius's soul vessel. He gave an example, like a hidden room or something similar. Claudia asked where they could even find such a thing, but then she remembered something. She once noticed a space under the floorboards in Julius's personal room. Limnoa realized she had an idea and ordered her to go there right away. He left the task to her before falling unconscious. Claudia tried to wake him once, but she quickly made up her mind. She sprinted away, only for Julius to appear in front of her and block her path. His astral form was suddenly cut apart. Arya reminded him that she and Alice were still standing in his way. Alice told Claudia to continue without worry. Claudia thanked them before running again while Julius glared at them. Claudia moved as fast as she could and remembered the strange space she once felt beneath Julius's room when they sneaked in earlier. She reached the room and stood over the floorboard. She tightened her tentacle and struck the wood. A staircase appeared, leading into a dark space below. It was exactly as she expected. Without hesitating, she stepped onto the stairs that descended into the shadows. Claudia bravely went down the stairs. She felt sure that Julius's soul vessel was somewhere below. When she reached the bottom, she entered a room. At the center, a dark ring sat on a pedestal. Claudia believed it was the soul vessel and moved toward it so she could bring it to Washio. Before she touched the ring, a huge skeleton monster with swords dropped from the ceiling. Claudia sensed the danger just in time and avoided the slashes. The skeleton glared at her and released a fast series of attacks. Claudia stepped back and acted weak for a moment as if asking for help. She then claimed she was only joking and calmly counted the monster's arms. She laughed when she reached 6. She released her tentacles and said the skeleton was still 2 arms short if it wanted to beat a kraken. She reminded it not to underestimate the strength of a monster girl, and delivered a powerful strike to its chest and then its jaw. For some reason, the jewel in the ring began to make cracking sounds. Claudia kept beating the skeleton and never gave it a chance to fight back. When she finally destroyed the monster, the jewel also shattered. Outside, everyone struggled against Julius. Alice lay on the ground and told Arya to escape. Arya, however, was already trapped by the unsettling Julius. Despair covered her face, which seemed to excite the twisted teacher. Julius believed Arya's fear would be perfect for him. Arya closed her eyes, ready for whatever came next. Julius's smile slowly shifted into confusion when a kick struck his face. Washio was the one who landed the blow, and Julius rolled across the ground. Radon cheered because she managed a clean hit. Washio said he would have been dead if Julius still had his astral body. Radon gave a small apology. Arya asked if the two were all right now. Washio confirmed they were, but he suddenly grew flustered when he noticed Arya's defenseless state. Arya pointed out that her appearance was not even bad compared to Radon, who was almost naked. Washio also noticed Alice's damaged legs. The automaton calmly said she was fine, even with the broken joints. Washio then realized Limnoa was still unconscious nearby. Meanwhile, Julius was left confused as he tried to understand how Washio Missile managed to touch and hurt him. He quickly realized that the ring had broken. When he saw Claudia returning with a wide smile, he understood she was the one who destroyed it. A moment later, a skeleton emerged from his mouth, revealing Julius's real form as an elder lich. He showed his anger toward the girls in a cruel way, calling them damned half-monsters. Arya felt cold sweat on her back as she wondered what the skeleton was, and Radon noticed how large it appeared. Julius rose over the group and prepared to give what he claimed would be his final lesson as their teacher, a lesson filled with true despair. At that moment, small flickers of light magic filled the area. Washio had already begun chanting a spell. He explained that something had always existed inside the light, something so small that most people never noticed it, yet it grew brighter whenever darkness and despair became stronger. That small bloom was hope, and he believed it was something teachers needed to pass on even to themselves. Beams of light surrounded Julius and struck him from every side. He felt the overwhelming magic and believed he had finally found what he wanted for his new body. He reached toward Washio while calling out the title he once held. hoping to claim what he thought was his perfect form. Those thoughts ended as his skeletal body crumbled into dust. Washio remained silent while the sunlight slowly returned to the academy. 5 days had passed since the incident with Julius. Washio had used up all his strength in that fight and collapsed on the ground. He never returned to them because he had died there. After the incident happened, an investigation team from the kingdom arrived right away. They questioned Draco and the school principal about what truly happened. They could not let anyone learn about Washio's real identity, so they created a new story. In that story, an A-ranked hero named Limnoa became the one who saved the school. At first he tried to deny it, but he soon grew excited and proudly talked about his supposed heroics. In the following days, repairs began on the damaged school building. While the work continued, classes were moved a week earlier to a seaside school building that stood far from the main one. It turned into an unexpected seaside study trip, even though Washio was no longer with them. The students were amazed by the speed of the train and the wide view of the nearby sea. Cats with lunchboxes tied to their backs walked around inside the train. Mob asked the snake girl which lunch she wanted. The snake girl chose a cold lunch, and a cat jumped onto her lap and quickly fell asleep so she could eat from the lunchbox on its back. While most students enjoyed their lunchboxes, Draco cooked inside the train by grilling, which made everyone complain. Draco insisted she was not troubling anyone. They told her she was being a bother. Mob wondered what they were all doing. She then asked Alice if her lunch was enough. Alice held up a monster Roboki drink and said one can gave her enough energy for the entire day. Claudia stayed quiet with a sad look on her face. Arya noticed it and paused her meal. She still could not accept that Washio was gone. When she closed her eyes, she could still picture his gentle smile and hear his warm voice as if he had never left. At that moment, she truly heard Washio's voice. The girls froze in confusion. Claudia opened the window and saw Washio shouting for help. He rode in the passenger seat while Limnoa drove. Limnoa reminded him that he still had half of the apology letters to finish and refused to let his hands rest during the seaside school trip. Washio said he did not want to write anymore. Limnoa could not believe that this clerical work bothered him, and he thought Washio was still an incompetent E-ranked teacher. Washio made it clear he was already D-ranked. Even so, he said he would collapse at this pace and begged for help. He called out to his girls hoping they would save him. The girls only watched through the train window. Claudia told him to do his best. Arya said she would play tag with him on the beach once he finished his paperwork. Draco said she bought a swimsuit for him and told him to finish so he could see her wear it. Alice said her master could handle his work. Washio cried even harder, and Limnoa looked annoyed. While the others traveled to the seaside campus, a crow in the ruined school building picked up Julius's broken ring and flew away with it. Soon after, Washio was finally finished with his paperwork. Limnoa could not believe it took him a whole day. He tried to hand him more work, but Washio refused. He did not want to write anything else. Limnoa said he had not even spoken yet. He then told Washio to go check on the monster girls because it was originally his job as their homeroom teacher to watch over them while they enjoyed the beach. Meanwhile, the students stepped onto the beach. The boys felt excited when they saw the girls in their swimsuits. They could not believe such beauty existed in front of them. Some of the girls also felt happy to be alive at that moment. They were thankful because they got to see the monster girls in their swimsuits. The girls came out to enjoy the sun. As a Kraken, Claudia felt glad to be near the sea. One tourist said he had found an SSR. His friend asked where, and he pointed at Claudia, who showed her curvy figure. She was his type because of her cute face too. Another man preferred the slender Arya because of her calm and cool presence. The men then walked toward the two girls and tried to hit on them. The leader suggested they visit his nearby villa if they felt bored. He invited the girls for a drink. A nearby shopkeeper told the students that those 4 men were the 4 heavenly playboys. A male student asked if they were famous. The shopkeeper said they were more infamous because they were rich and attractive men with an almost perfect record when it came to picking up women. He wondered if the young ladies would be all right. Claudia and Arya stayed quiet for a moment. Claudia then used her tentacles to move the men out of their way and called to the others. The leader of the playboys could not believe his smile and fancy villa charm failed on her. He thought she had arrived with some handsome rich man. It turned out to be Washio. Arya and Claudia held on to him. Washio apologized for being late with their shaved ice. The playboy could not believe he lost to an older man who looked plain. He also could not believe girls like them would stay close to someone like that. He guessed Washio was hiding great wealth, but chose to dress in a dull way. The girls then asked Washio to buy them roasted corn cobs later. Washio asked them to lend him some money. The playboy thought he looked lame and assumed he was poor. He then decided Washio was probably their father. However, Claudia suddenly asked Washio to feed her as punishment. This made the playboy realize they were going out. He could not believe he lost to someone like that. His friend agreed and said the sight ruined his mood. The students who watched everything in silence thought the playboys never had a chance. because the monster girls were clearly meant for Washio. Even so, they still did not know why Washio was so popular among the monster girls. Washio also gave Alice her shaved ice, and Alice thanked him. Draco, who had been lying under the parasol, complained that she could not sleep because of the noise. She scolded Alice for not waking her up when Washio arrived. Alice explained that Washio had just gotten there. Washio grew worried when he saw Draco's swimsuit. Draco ignored him and suggested that they play in the water instead. Washio tried to call her out again because of her swimsuit, but Draco showed it off to him and asked if it looked good while letting something slightly peek out. Washio shouted that it looked amazing. The girls then pulled Washio into the water and invited him and Draco to play beach volleyball with them. They began playing, and Washio almost got hit by Claudia's strong shot. He ended up getting hit during the next one. Even so, Washio still joined the girls and enjoyed the beach with them. Alice sat under the parasol while watching the girls play with her master. At the same time, she kept her eyes on something behind the rocks. Washio sensed it as well and thought something had been staring at him. Draco told him to go farther into the water. Washio believed he might be imagining things and left. From the nearby rocks, a figure wearing glasses peeked out. Someone had been watching them in secret. Claudia kept splashing water on Washio, and Aria joined in because she wanted to see him get wet too. Draco jokingly said that Washio had been staring at Claudia's chest. Claudia played along and called Washio a pervert. Washio firmly denied it, and Alice also called her master a pervert. After a while, Washio went with Alice to rest under the parasol. He said it was time for him to take a break because he could not keep up with everyone's energy. He asked Alice if she would not go into the water and wondered if salt water was bad for her. Alice explained she was fully amphibious, so seawater was not a problem at all. Washio told her to go and have fun. Alice quietly watched the other girls enjoying themselves in the water. She then looked at her own hand and said her body was not attractive like Claudia's and the others, so she felt there was no point in wearing a swimsuit. Washio asked if it really bothered her. After a quiet moment, he told her she should never say she had no value. He said beauty started when she learned to love herself, and that the key to beauty was to keep her eyes on the people she cared about. Alice listened in silence. Washio wondered if he sounded pretentious, but Alice said he did not, and that his words were educational. She then chose to change into a form better suited for underwater activity. She said she would change when Washio told her to transform. Washio imagined her turning into a mermaid or even a scuba diver. He grew excited thinking of her as a mecha like an anime, so he shouted the word transform. Alice made mechanical sounds and even removed her swimsuit. Washio could not believe she was just changing clothes and scolded her for doing it outside. Claudia asked the boys not to look, and Aria told them to turn away. Alice said she doubted anyone would care about an automaton's body. Washio said people would care because she was attractive. Since everyone covered their eyes, Alice released her smokescreen to block their view and finished her transformation. She now wore a more mature swimsuit with a floating ring. She went back to Washio's side. Everyone realized how good Alice looked and wished they could stand beside her. When she stepped into the water, she felt the cold and shivered. Aria invited her to enjoy the moment with them. Suddenly, Draco suggested a race to a distant rock. Washio refused because he did not have a swimsuit and felt tired. Draco kept pushing him, so Washio took off his top and agreed to race one time. Alice heard them and asked if she could join as well. Washio warned them that going into deeper water too fast could be dangerous, so he told them to wait for a moment. Alice said she would still follow along. The race started, and Draco reached the goal almost instantly. She celebrated her victory, but she soon realized Washio was missing. When she looked around, she found him drifting in the deeper part of the water. She was shocked that he had been pulled away so quickly. Washio struggled and signaled for help. Draco grew worried and wondered why he was only floating and not swimming back. Washio explained that he could not move because a rip current held him in place. Draco did not understand what he meant. Claudia then explained loudly that swimmers caught in a rip current needed to move to the left or right to escape it. Washio apologized and admitted that his foot had cramped, so he could not follow the advice. Mob and Aria rushed off to find another teacher. Claudia told Washio to wait because she planned to go to him soon. Before she could move, Alice suddenly shot forward by turning her legs into fast-spinning propellers. Washio felt even more helpless as he watched her move, and his other foot started cramping too. A wave hit him and he sank deeper into the water. Right before he lost consciousness and air, someone reached him and shared enough breath through their mouth to keep him alive. She guided him upward by controlling the water with a simple motion of her hand. Washio returned to the surface and tried to catch his breath while feeling confused about what had happened. Alice finally reached him, placed him in a floating ring, and brought him safely back to shore. She supported him as he walked and checked if he was all right. Washio thanked her for the rescue. At that moment, Aria and the others arrived with Limnoa. One of the female teachers asked with concern if Washio was safe. Limnoa called Washio pathetic for almost drowning. Claudia worriedly wondered if she needed to perform mouth-to-mouth resuscitation. Draco quickly claimed she would do it instead, but Washio refused. Limnoa pointed out that Washio was conscious and did not need anything like that. Even so, Washio felt a strange sense of familiarity from a past event that involved a fish monster. While he tried to remember that old memory, Alice called out to him, but her swimsuit slipped. Everyone froze in shock. Some covered their eyes, some stared with wide mouths, and some even got nosebleeds. Alice stayed silent. Washio covered her and told her to hide herself because he believed everyone was staring at her for a reason. After hearing that, Alice asked if her master was also included among the people looking at her. Washio slowly admitted it. Alice started smiling and giggling, then playfully called her master a pervert. Later that night, the students gathered outside. Washio asked if they had already formed groups of 5. He said it was time to begin the test of courage. He suddenly screamed after feeling something slimy touch his cheek. It turned out to be Claudia, who trembled with fear while holding on to him. She said she was scared. Washio said he was also scared. Claudia insisted they should go together and said she would feel safer in the dark if he stayed with her. Washio tried to calm her by saying he would be waiting at the finish line. Claudia kept pleading while pressing her chest against him. Washio felt he was in trouble. Earlier, Limnoa explained how the test of courage would work after dinner. Since Washio was still recovering, he told him to rest after watching the students leave. He also told the teachers in charge of scaring the students that he hoped they would all do their best. The cook then reminded the teachers to take turns eating. She asked how they planned to scare the students this year. Limnoa said the theme this time was a cursed ritual. This surprised Washio, and he nervously asked what kind of frightening ritual it was. Limnoa said it was an old ritual passed down in the village. He added that Washio truly lived up to being an E-rank teacher since he did not know about it. Washio reminded him he was now D-rank. The cook then explained the story. Long ago, a woman who was betrayed by a man made a doll using his hair and sewed it into the doll. She nailed it to a tree night after night until the man suddenly died from exhaustion. Since then, the forest behind the school had been known as the Cursed Forest. Some people even said they could still hear the sound of nails being hammered into a tree. Washio became scared. Limnoa could not believe how easily he panicked over a simple story. However, the cook said it was not just a story. She said the old man from the tavern and some tourists claimed they had heard the cursed ritual in the forest. Limnoa started sweating. The cook explained that fewer beachgoers had been spreading the story recently, so she reminded them to stay careful during the test of courage, both for the teachers and the students. After hearing that scary story, Washio did not feel like joining the test of courage anymore. Claudia kept begging him to go with her since she felt scared, but Arya pinched her cheek and pulled her away. She told Claudia to stop acting selfishly. Washio felt relieved and said he would wait for them at the finish line. Arya then stopped him and asked if he would really be fine walking through the forest at night by himself. Her smile showed that she knew he was a scaredy cat. She warned him that he might run into poisonous bugs or even scorpions. Washio quietly panicked. Draco doubted that the forest even had poisonous bugs. Alice said her scans showed that Arya was the only poisonous creature in the area. Washio ended up agreeing to go with the girls and asked Arya to protect him. Arya giggled and agreed, and the other girls called her a scammer. They entered the forest together. A bug flew at them and landed on Claudia's chest. She panicked and told Washio to remove it. Washio got scared, backed away, and bumped into Arya. He knocked her to the ground. Arya blushed, but Washio did not notice her at all. He focused on the centipede next to her. Arya glared at the centipede for ruining her moment. The test went on, and a teacher wearing a scary mask suddenly appeared to frighten them. Washio ran with his hands straight forward. Draco tried to guess which teacher it was, but Washio grabbed her chest by accident. Draco froze for a moment, then punched him for being a pervert. Washio fell to the ground, and when he stood up, he found himself trapped under Alice's dress. After those lucky moments, Washio and the girls continued their walk through the dark woods. Limnoa was already hiding and getting ready to scare the monster girls. He swore he would make them scream now that he was an A-ranked teacher. Soon, the sound of nails hitting a hammer echoed through the trees. Claudia grew anxious and wondered what the noise was. Washio tried to dismiss it by saying woodpeckers often made sounds like that. Limnoa suddenly appeared and claimed it was the sound of a cursed ritual. His sudden arrival frightened Washio so much that he almost fell over. When Washio realized it was only Limnoa, he felt relieved right away. Limnoa explained that the cook's warning earlier might have been true, and that the noise could really be a cursed ritual. He said that whether it was real or fake, they needed to stop it because it disturbed their school activities. Washio refused to go, but Limnoa reminded him not to be selfish and told him to remember his duty as a teacher. As the group moved forward, the noise grew louder and faster. Claudia noticed the same thing. Even Limnoa felt uneasy and believed the sound came from a deep grudge. When they reached the spot where the noise originated, Limnoa prepared to reveal the truth. Instead, they found themselves standing at the edge of a cliff with no one else around. Washio grew confused until he realized the clanging sound was coming from below. They looked down and saw a sea otter relaxing in the water while hitting two shells together.